An open book lies on the table. On the page, a traveler in armor with a sword is drawn, going into battle, armed with a sacred artifact to exterminate demons and monsters and protect people. The traveler is honored as a hero for saving cities, and his exploits are passed down from generation to generation, and a little boy, his eyes sparkling excitedly, exclaims, "Hero." But suddenly the bullies snatch the book from the boy, loom over him, and laugh, holding it in their hands as if they had taken a talisman. The boy in the black t-shirt snorts disdainfully and points his finger, as if to say he reads the book himself, while the second hooligan mutters crookedly and begins to read the short description aloud for others. The hooligans burst out laughing again, poking words at the boy. His cowardice will never let him become a hero as long as he sits silently before them. That day the boy stopped dreaming of becoming a hero but firmly decided to become a traveler to fight back against the bullies, yet the words would not obey him. A girl appeared on the playground and ordered them to return the book. Her name was Ruby, and she was the one to give the boy a chance for the long-awaited turn in his fate. The man barely opened his eyes and whispered her name, and Ruby sat by his bed, silently looking at him and gently wishing the rats good morning. Rat suddenly sat up in bed and asked what Ruby was doing in his room, and she hurriedly fussed and explained that she had been knocking for a long time and then simply climbed in through the window. Ruby was asked to wake the rats, and she quickly ordered him to prepare without delay, because today was finally the day of the blessing ritual they had waited for too long. At the ceremony, children who turned 12 are solemnly given sacred treasures from God, and one woman anxiously says she will not be able to go with them. The woman asks Ruby to take care of the rats, and Ruby gladly agrees like an older sister, while the rats grumble in response, hinting that they are the same age. The church is crowded with people, and Ruby involuntarily compares the ceremony to a festival, until Rats sharply notices that she is behaving like a child. Ruby asks if he read again until morning and notices how the rats impatiently awaited this day, but he still overslept. Rats admits that he is a little trembling inside from excitement, and Ruby replies that it is normal because something like this happens only once in a lifetime. Rats was afraid that he would get some strange, sacred relic, but Ruby immediately calmed him down and said that such a possibility is very small. Ruby explained that the boys always fought and looked down on her, so she decided to find something really cool for herself and outplay them, and the Chrysanata warmly nodded and supported the idea. Suddenly they heard someone mutter, "If one of them gets a C rank, he will automatically become an adventurer." The boys argued about the blonde who dreamed of getting a rank no lower than D and reminded him of his plans. He was going to open a fruit shop. Nearby, two girls loudly declared that they wanted an adventurer guardian and not to go on adventures themselves, and the rats together with Ruby noticed that too many different people had gathered for the ceremony. Ratsu notices some strangers by the road and tensely wonders if they are adventurers looking for adventures. Ratsu replies that if the travelers invite him, he will be able to become a traveler without an exam, and he grips his book tighter, holding back his excitement. Ruby reminds about their promise. They must protect people from demons, and Ratsu, as if catching her determination, says they will become the coolest heroes. They look at each other, catch a shared intention in their eyes, and together solemnly declare that from now on they will become travelers. As loud voices of children just reach them, they stop as if rooted to the spot. The kids swear they saw heroes somewhere nearby. Ruby excitedly explains that such a name is given to the strongest hero, but in a moment several girls call her by that very name. Ruby tells Ratsu that she will return soon and goes to the girls, where she has many friends, while next to Ratsu there is no one, until suddenly someone sharply pushes him. They were bullies who constantly picked on him, and the blonde with sunny features sarcastically apologizes, as if he did not notice such a tiny boy. Helio smiles indulgently and asks if Ratsu also intends to participate in the ceremony. He states that a weakling like Ratsu will not be able to fight, so he has no reason to come to the ceremony. Ratsu feels awkward and, swallowing his words, cautiously replies that maybe that is really so. Helio doubts that Ratsu will become a true hero even with the artifact, mocks him and reaches to throw the book away, but suddenly someone sharply grabs his hand. Ruby thunderously demands that Helio immediately return the book. Helio jerks his hand back and with a barely disgusted gesture throws the book aside, as if it no longer matters to him. When Helio finally leaves, he throws over his shoulder to Ratsu words that he is a coward protected by a woman and that he is not worthy to hold the artifact. The boy was completely broken by the words of the offender, so Ruby bent down to pick up the book and clearly asked him not to respond to Helio. Ruby smiled as she handed him the book and gently encouraged him. He would become a truly great hero. The boy looked at Ruby and thought to himself that she understood his feelings just as he felt them. The church was crowded. The priest began the sacred blessing ritual, raising his hands, and called the participants to approach the altar. Ratu immersed himself in reading while Ruby called him, and the blonde confidently decided to go first and began slowly ascending to the altar. The priest instructed the boy to pray. He immediately bowed his head and began quietly saying a prayer, and through the window a dazzling light poured into the room in a wide stream. Everyone squinted from the brightness. Ratsu, peeking through half-closed eyes, thought that this was probably the blessing ceremony. But suddenly a large sea-sworded steel axe appeared in the boy's hands. Ruby covered her mouth in surprise, and the other boys looked at him irritably. The boy raised the axe high above his head and solemnly showed it to all present. Everyone was impressed because the very first participant received the C-rank artifact. The boy was beaming with joy, and the priest gave him further instructions. Next to the altar, a short-haired girl approaches, kneels down, and immerses herself in prayer. Suddenly, an artifact C-rank, a storm dagger, appears in her hands, and she raises it before those present, shining with boundless happiness. The crowd erupts with joy as this is already the second C-rank artifact in their hands, and everyone eagerly awaits what will happen next. Artifacts are divided into ranks A, B, C, D, E, and F, with rank D considered average, but now 2 people have already obtained rank C. Ruby joyfully addresses Ratsu, saying that they will definitely acquire a good artifact, while Ratsu feels, today everything must change, as Helio slowly approaches the altar. Ratsu is very nervous and Ruby tries to encourage him, but at that moment they hear that Helio has obtained a B-rank lightning spear. Helio proudly looks around at the people, and his companions shout wildly for him to show his spear to everyone present. When Helio descends to the ground, the travelers call him and invite him to join their teams, and among the crowd he finds Ratsu and Ruby and mockingly smiles badly at them. Ratsu believes that Helio got the artifact without any effort and looks at him with irritation, while Ruby bursts into rage, heads to the altar, and declares that she will get herself a better weapon. She approached the altar, introduced herself, and thanked the priest, and after that closed her eyes and began to pray. He silently watched her and tried to guess whether Ruby noticed his feelings. In childhood, he constantly read books, so over time he remained alone, as if he became a goal for himself. The boys always attacked him, but Ruby fought back to the last, believing that he would definitely become a hero. Ruby fought with Helio, and Ratsu closed his eyes in fear, afraid to see what would happen next. She told him that as an older sister she could not protect him forever, and that he needed to become strong to be a cool hero. At that moment he thought that he wanted to be just like her. Ruby received the A-rank Fire Dragon Sword as soon as the blade was in his hands. The church immediately fell silent. Suddenly the hall exploded with excited shouts. Ratsu was struck by her attention, and she joyfully shouted that she had obtained the strongest artifact. Strange travelers blocked her way and persistently called her to join, but she barely fended them off and, smiling, wished Ratsu good luck. He climbed the stairs and sincerely thanked her, then, approaching the altar, said his name and began to pray. He prayed for the power that would transform a weak, tearful boy into a strong and brave one, for the power to defeat Helio, and for the power that would allow him to fight side by side with Ruby. He needed this power above all for one thing, to protect Ruby from any danger. Dim light barely seeped through the window, and suddenly a rusty sword appeared in his palms, heavy and cold to the touch. At first everyone was silent, but Helio and his friends broke the silence with coarse laughter. They mocked Ratsu, pointed fingers, and asked what kind of junk this was. Everyone laughed, and Ruby approached him closer, carefully supporting and trying to encourage him, and just then the sound of footsteps in heels rang out, click, click, and Ruby sharply turned around. A long-haired blonde confidently walked toward them, and as soon as she came closer, everyone stepped aside. They looked at her with sincere admiration. She asked the hero Paludi to invite them to join her, saying it as if the decision was obvious and quick. She turned to Ruby with an invitation to join the hero's party, and a silence fell over the crowd in surprise until Ruby asked to repeat what was said. Paludi sharply turned around and impatiently ordered Ruby to follow her, and Ruby froze awkwardly, not believing what she heard. Wasting no time, she grabbed Ratsu by the hand and ran after Paludi, pleading for her to stop. Ratsu had rank F and his rusty sword nicknamed Rusty, so when Ruby asked Paludi to take the hero with her, the boy only glanced indifferently at the child's weapon. Paludi said dryly that with such a sword he would never become a hero. At these words, Ratsu completely weakened, as if the last of his strength had been drained along with his hope. He had the weakest F-class artifact, while demons had tough skin held by magic, so with low-rank weapons he could not inflict any wounds. Paludi added that if Ratsu went with them, he would only become food for the demons and advised him to surrender, but Ruby resolutely encouraged him despite this. She silently nods as if promising help, and the hero turns away, and the young man sadly asks her again to support him. He catches her gaze and thinks that she treats him warmer than the hero, but suddenly fear flashes in his mind. Could it be that she will really protect him forever, and this becomes unbearable? The young man retreats from this thought and no longer wants to be protected by power, recalling the moment when she shielded him from bullies. He asks her to go ahead and wait for him at the place they agreed on, and the girl blinks in surprise because he stubbornly says he will pass the trial alone and become a traveler. So she asks about his promise, and he answers, he will become the strongest. Inside himself, he swears to become strong and protect her, and aloud solemnly promises to catch up. Ruby remembers how Ratsu once shouted at the monsters, ordering them to get away. Then he firmly took her by the hand and walked ahead, quietly calming her with words that she was strong and that there were no more monsters. When they returned, he asked her not to cry, although through a forced smile his voice trembled and tears welled up, and Ruby thought, Ratsu is a true hero. Ruby gently took his head, kissed his hair, and whispered that she would wait for him. She asked him to catch up with her, and solemnly said that this was their new promise. The book spread out on the ground lay with a splayed page, and the boys looked at this sight gloomily and discontentedly. Ratsu watched Ruby as she walked away, and bitterly thought that he would not be able to keep the promisito become a traveler with her until he made himself a new vow. They brought him the weakest artifact, but he stubbornly did not give up. He looked at the sword and barely smiled because it was rusted just like himself. Ratsu raised the sword to the sun, and the rays slid over the rust as he promised himself and others to become the strongest hero. Little Ruby looked at little Ratsu and thought that, unlike the heroes from the book, he was weak, fussy, and unreliable. She considered him her hero because when the monsters attacked, he protected even though he had nothing in his hands. In the forest, cries about some monster echoed, and a creature was rushing straight towards the girls, cutting through the silence with the rustle of its paws on the undergrowth. A small monster growled, crawled closer, and the girls whispered to Ruby to calm down and not give in to fear. The blonde explained that big monsters usually do not enter villages, but Ruby still kept her sword ready, breathing tensely. Ruby was covered in sweat, breathing heavily, and in the next moment the blonde suddenly dropped the sword as if she decided to act differently. She explained that these were not the monsters one really needed to fear. Ruby remembered how often she used to come to this forest to play with the local children. The blonde asked if Artsu did not bother her, and at these words Ruby felt a bitter sadness. She immediately denied that it was really not so at all. The girl in the hat and cloak asked how children could play here at all if there were no strong monsters nearby, and Ruby replied that she was protected even from weaker monsters. Then the girls asked Ruby to take them under her protection. Smiling, the girl replied that some hero had protected her. Ratu's mother was sweeping the yard and suddenly turned around and asked Ratu what he was going to do next. Dressed as a farmer, Ratu said he decided to help her on the farm, and it sounded natural since he was raised by a woman. He was about to leave when his mother called him. She held his rusty sword in her hands and said that he had forgotten something very important. She asked if he was going to become a traveler, and the young man nodded affirmatively. Then the mother warned that he had no time for chores on the farm. He stared at his mother with his mouth agape, and she asked him to promise that he would run away as soon as it became dangerous. The day was clear, the sun was burning in the sky, and birds were flying carefree overhead. He long felt burdened by a debt to Ruby and her mother and decided to repay them everything, when he noticed wheel tracks most likely from a carriage of some traveler. He looked ahead and thought about how he would become a traveler, no matter how far Ruby went. He plunged into memories of what had once happened to him and Ruby in this forest, but his thoughts were cut by a sharp sound from behind. There stood a tree ready to grab him. He turned sharply and saw Trent. A tree monster grabbed his leg and pulled him closer like a living root. The young man swung and tried to strike the tree with his rusty sword, but the blade slipped without any effect, and the tree threw him to the ground. The boy lay in pain and convulsions, and in every breath there was a real battle with the element that would not let go. He got up, firmly took the sword in his hands, and remembering his promise, resolutely moved back toward the tree despite his fear. He returned home all beaten, and his mother asked if he had run away, and he answered affirmatively without looking away. The next day, he rushed at the monster again to fight it. He struck the tree with his sword, missed again, got angry, and spoke as if his sword were as dull as an ordinary stick. The next day, two lumberjack brothers passed by Ratsu, who was stubbornly training, hitting the tree as if it were his opponent. And the next day he was there again fighting the monster, and the day after that he returned too, not retreating a step. 3 years passed since that day, and his stubbornness still knew no bounds. Two girls stood by the bridge, earnestly discussing how one of them could leave the village, when suddenly the tree monster thundered straight at them. Ratsu rushed forward, raised his sword, and began swiftly chopping at the branches and trunk, repelling the monster's attack. The tree suddenly froze. Ratsu exhaled and looked at the girls, quickly asking if they were okay and if anyone was hurt. But as soon as he looked away, an arrow whistled sharply through the air and struck the monster, causing it to shudder. The blonde girl barely laughed and said she had managed to defeat it, and the other girl gratefully thanked the young man for his help. The young man sat in silence, lost in thought. 3 years had passed since Ruby left, and he very slowly looked at his sword, as if measuring how close he had come to her. 3 years of exhausting training had only raised him to level 10, and from this truth an unpleasant uncertainty began to grow within him. He forced himself to firmly say that he must train even harder to catch up with her, while the lumberjack boys closely watched his condition. One of the lumberjack brothers bluntly voiced a bitter thought to him. His training was in vain because 3 whole years had passed since he started training. He painfully recalled Ruby, her image in his memory, and her words that she would wait for him, and this thought did not let him give up. He sat under a tree, immersed in thoughts about how far she could have gone, and decided that he probably could not catch up with her, then closed his eyes and fell asleep. Suddenly he heard children's cries and rushed swiftly to where the crying came from, pressing each step to the ground. He burst into a clearing and immediately saw a little girl standing in the middle of the open space, as if cut off from all help. It was Ruby. She stood among monsters and trembled, unable to hold back tears from fear. And suddenly he was overwhelmed by a memory. Once, when they were very small, Ruby got lost, and then monsters surrounded her. Just as he was about to help Ruby, a little boy ran up to him, snatched a stick, and began chasing away the small monsters. He grabbed Ruby by the hand and sharply pulled her away from the monsters, tearing her out from under their shadow. The elder Ratsu watched from the dark edge and suddenly realized these were the same movements he himself once used as a child to chase away fear. Meanwhile, the younger Ratsu was calming Ruby. He asked Ruby not to cry anymore and squeezed the stick in his hands so tightly as if it could stop all the pain. Senior Ratsu notices this impulse and concludes that they were saved not by magic or chance, but by an ordinary stick. Suddenly Ratsu hears Ruby's voice. She asks if he will become a cool hero. Little Ruby stands before the young man and, flashing her eyes, says that she will eagerly await the day he becomes a hero. Ratsu opens his eyes and immediately realizes that it was all just a dream, and around him again reality. He shifts his gaze to his artifact, still charged with the strange dream, and confidently declares that he will definitely catch up with Ruby. Suddenly he hears sharp and alarming screams, and turning toward the sound, thinks he is still asleep. He understands that this is not a dream, sharply grasps reality, and runs toward the sounds until the clearing opens before him. A giant wolf-like monster looms over the little girl, and the young man freezes in despair, trying to figure out how to defeat this demon. He recalls, demons, unlike other monsters, are endowed with intelligence and, like humans, believe in their own rules. They receive treasures from their evil deities. The young man looks at the monster with horror and says that they are enemies of humanity, ready to destroy everyone without choice. Suddenly he hears a human voice, turns around, and sees the lumberjack brothers standing in the forest, frozen and trembling with fear, as if afraid to take a step. As soon as the brothers start to flee, the young man sharply stops them, and they impatiently ask what exactly he wants from them. Ratsu explains that running away and abandoning a little girl to the mercy of a demon is not allowed, but the brothers respond that they cannot handle the monster, so they call the village guards. He says that demons, like humans, grow. By killing a demon, a person receives a blessing, but when a demon kills people, it does not stop and simply continues killing further. The young man warns, before the village guards arrive, the demon will have already dealt with the girl, so the brothers, having artifacts, must confront him. To this, the brothers state that their artifacts are only of medium level. They break away from the place and run, shouting at the last moment that their artifacts are not suitable for a real fight, and the young man grips his sword tighter and watches intently as the demon runs straight to the little girl. The girl with 2 ponytails froze in fear, staring intently at the demon and cannot even move from the spot. The demon approaches closer, mockingly says that from such a petty bug he will get only a meager enhancement, and solemnly proclaims, "It's time for you to die." Barely does the demon raise his sword when some guy appears nearby and sharply intercepts it, ordering him to immediately get away from the girl. The demon freezes in surprise, and the guy clearly repeats his own words, as if challenging the ruling that the demon just made. The demon laughs at the guy and declares that he did not hear because his voice was too weak, then boldly looks away, maintaining a threatening silence. Ratsu lunged at the demon and struck him with a rusty sword, screaming wildly for him to get away. The demon stopped the strike of the rusty blade with one hand, looked at the guy and said that he once considered trash what was in his hands, but it turned out to be a sacred artifact. You pushed the guy away and laughed as if you were the biggest runaway of all. He raised the sword and a black aura crawled from the blade, promising the boy what his weapon was truly capable of when the demon was about to show its power. With one swing of the sword, he raised a storm that knocked Ratsu off his feet. A real hurricane of strikes and gusts exploded around Ratsu, as if the air was torn to pieces. The girl screamed even more piercingly, and the boy was suddenly hit by the colossal power of the demon, as if his body was scorched from the inside. Ratsu realized that he could not defeat the demon directly, so he decided to buy at least a moment of time until the guards arrived. But the demon suddenly appeared behind him and boldly asked where his confidence came from. Laughing ominously, the demon wished death upon Ratsu and sharply raised his sword, preparing for the decisive blow. Ratsu managed to parry the attack with his sword, but the icy, inhuman strength of the demon threw him into flight, and he spun uncontrollably in the air. The demon contemptuously tells Ratsu that from such trifles he will receive neither a good blessing nor benefit. But Ratsu felt people in the darkness, which means there really is a village nearby, so he declares that he will go there and, killing everyone, receive generous blessings. The man sits in tense anticipation as the monster slowly approaches the little girl, preparing to kill her first. The monster suddenly swings its huge sword at her, but suddenly from somewhere to the side a boy shouts a challenge and changes the course of events. Ratsu rushed towards the monster at the very moment it had already struck the girl, and he managed to parry the blow in time. The demon noted that Ratsu had a decent swing but still glanced indifferently. This had no chance, and he began pressing his sword against the boy's rusty blade, promising to see him later. But suddenly cracks began to crawl along the rust on the sword. Pieces of the rusty layer peeled off, and this suddenly shocked the boy. The demon sharply threw Ratsu several meters forward, and coldly promised to kill him as soon as he dealt with the little girl. Ratsu lay motionless and in his thoughts apologized to Ruby for not being able to keep his promise. He thought that he was unable to keep either the first promise or the second, and feared how this would anger her, but still hoped that Ruby would not be mad. But he did not give up. He tightly gripped the sword because he knew no one but him could protect the girl. He stood up again, and at that very moment the demon sharply turned around, as if preparing for a new strike. They both rushed into attack, and Ratsu maintained cold composure even if it would cost him his life. Their swords clashed again with a powerful strike, and the shockwave hit both the demon and the boy, while the cracks on Ratsu's blade increased even more. Suddenly all the rusty coating tore off the boy's sword. The demon blinked in surprise, and the blade suddenly became large, smooth, and dazzlingly shiny. In the young man's hands was now an S-rank cursed magical weapon, and all its powers and skills exceeded the mark of 500. When he lunged at the boy, the demon instantly noticed that both the artifact towards the young man and the boy's own power had already changed. He looked intently at the young man and realized, before him stood a young man of S-rank, and Ratsu himself felt his own power spreading in waves. Another clash began, but the young man had confident eyes, and the demon could not tolerate that. He barked at Ratsu, ordering him to speak, not to be silent, and not to look at him so boldly. The demon missed. His strike did not hit the ground, and Ratsu sharply responded that he had already warned about this from the very beginning. The young man struck the demon and immediately continued, emphasizing that from the very beginning he told him to stay away from the little girl. The young man did not understand what exactly was happening because his transformed artifact began to overflow with power, as if it was about to explode. His thought was firm, he could not lose. He clung to this confidence even when reality wavered beneath his feet. He stood with his back to the demon, and in the middle of the clearing a column of dust rose above their fight, interrupting the flight and sharply emphasizing the very moment of collision. The demon tells him that he only angered him, and the wounds inflicted by him are minor scratches that do not matter. They immediately rush into battle, compressing the time interval into a single burst. Ratsu delivers a sharp blow and hits the demon, who shudders and tears his throat with a scream from real pain. Suddenly, an incomprehensible glow flares in the air, and Ratsu involuntarily looked at it, confused. Ratsu's actions worked as a key for the magic, and the dark flames began to devour the demon, pulling it into the flames from within. Not giving the demon a chance to recover, Ratsu delivers the final deadly blow, as if putting a full stop to this clash. In his death throes, the demon screams in shock, unable to believe that some simple dirty relic could kill him. He disappears, leaving only his sword behind. Ratsu freezes in place, not moving and unable to believe that he really defeated the demon. He falls to the ground, and a little girl immediately runs up to him and asks if he is okay. As his consciousness begins to sink into darkness, he only hears her calling his name. Ratsu suddenly wakes up, jumping on the bed in his room, and his body still trembles from the nightmare. His mother opened the door and beamed with joy. Her son had woken up, and she brought him some fruit and explained that the guards had pulled him back from the forest. He barely remembered the guards but clearly kept the girl in his mind, so he immediately asked his mother about her, and she, placing the fruit on the table, assured him she was fine. He sighed with relief, and his mother sat on the edge of the bed and began to tell him that 3 years ago she herself dreamed that he would stop fighting monsters. She recalled that his father's parents had been weak and needy for a long time until they took up farming, and then she was especially glad that she had not stopped her son. The little girl tearfully thanked the boy's mother, and the mother saw how he had become stronger. The child's eyes now shone with hope, not fear. The boy looked at his mother, and tears were already standing in his eyes. She asked if he was going to take the traveler's exam, and he firmly answered yes, because he understood. She needed support, and then she hugged him tightly and asked him to promise her something. Mother asked him not to die before her arrival and to protect the people. With tears in his voice, he promised he would do it, and he was filled with joy. After all, he had such a mother. But just as everything was only beginning, she started demanding even more promises from him, and the boy resisted, saying that it was not one promise, but a whole bunch. 3 years passed since the Ruby left event, and now Ratsu's adventure finally begins. His goal was the city of White Rondo, a place for those who aspire to become travelers, so he took the exam too seriously to just pass and become one of the heroes. But as soon as the moment of trial came, his sword again turned into rusty junk, although the lumberjack brothers had already made him new sheaths as an apology. He drew the sword and began mastering the evolutionary skill. According to its rules, the young man had to spin the blade into a whirlwind and activate the effect, burning his own combat power to the last spark. A memory flashed before his eyes of how helpless he was during the battle with the demon, so he closed his eyes and forced himself to think only about how much he wanted to become a hero. The rust came off the sword again, the weapon was literally cleaned, and the young man watched in delight as it became usable. Even though the simple method did not change the main thing, the sword still looked like a demon's sword. He drew the fallen demon's sword and noticed with embarrassment that both blades had 2 similar features for it to be a coincidence. The guard who brought Ratsu home took both swords because he did not know which one belonged to the young man, and Ratsu immediately recognized all the characteristic marks and key details of the demon's sword. He could not leave the weapon out of battle, so he took it with him, but he understood that he would not be able to fight with someone else's artifact. As soon as he realized this, the demon's sword sharply flew upward as if pulled by an invisible force. In response, the young man's sword also surged upward, and the 2 weapons began to merge into a single form, while the youth froze, stunned as he watched the world swirl around their clash. Both swords united as one, screeching a metallic note in the air, and one of them fell to the ground, which he picked up and realized. The sword had given him a new skill, black flame, and the ability to synthesize. The youth froze, holding his breath, and looked with amazement at what was happening right before him. Artifact synthesis could enhance the blessed weapon of the evil god, so as soon as he acquired magic, he would be able to use it to its full power. The youth considered synthesis an extremely useful skill because he remembered. Back then the demon used black flame, and now this effect was synthesized and embodied in his swords. Despite his status still being 500, it seemed as if in his hands was a truly cheating weapon. Suddenly, a branch quietly crawled toward him, trying to grab him. Behind him grew numerous monster trees, and only when the youth sharply turned around did he finally notice that they had already surrounded him. Flames burst from one of the trees, and the youth barely managed to jump sideways out from under it. Ratsu exhaled with relief and, wasting no time, grabbed the sword with his hand. He focused and applied the black flame magic. A pillar of immense heat erupted from the blade. Ratsu burned the first 3 trees to ashes, leaving only clouds of hot smoke and ash. The monstrous trees standing behind the burned ones froze and stared ominously at the youth. Ratsu even blossoms from the fact that everything turned out to be true, and now he confidently creates magic. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierces him. He falls and drops the sword, clutching his head and screaming in terrible agony. His head is splitting, and in a trembling gaze he shifts his eyes to the sword, convinced that it has become his curse. The monster trees approach the young man and attack him with branches, but he freezes and watches, thinking that he cannot dodge the blows. Suddenly someone lunged forward and shouted, ordering him not to stir the powder, dry twigs and leaves, and all of this flies and soars right toward the youth. He froze with a stunned look, and right in front of him sat a girl, pressing her hands as if shielding him, and quietly asked if he was okay. The city of White Rondo stretched endlessly, and its streets teemed with crowds of people who converged and dispersed like waves. The hero stopped in front of the Travelers Guild and, not believing his own eyes, looked around at its colossal size and majestic facade. He decided that this is exactly where the true journey of the traveler begins. He slightly pushed the door and carefully peeked inside. Inside, the building was crowded with people, and from this multitude of faces and voices, the young man was breathless with excitement and wonder. Next to him stood participants of the adventurers' competition, and the entire space trembled with tension before new trials. The hero heard that the chance of success for adventurers falls below 1 with each new attempt, and if he fails, he will have to wait 6 months, so he stubbornly held on to the goal of catching up with Ruby and recalled that day. The girl, who until then had been protecting him from monsters, suddenly asked him to give her what he was holding and leave immediately. He looked at her in surprise, not understanding who she was, an adventurer who came to save him, or a stranger, and what impressed him most was her shield artifact. The headache receded and the strength returned, but his sword was covered with rust again. It was a cursed magic sword, and that was its true power. He drew the sword and rushed into battle against the tree monsters, while the girl tried to stop him because she did not believe that his rusty blade was capable of real power. But as soon as he dealt with the tree, the sword suddenly changed, and with one precise strike he cut it down. The victory became obvious, so the girl froze in shock. The girl asked if Radu was okay, and he confidently nodded, releasing the tension with a smile, and sincerely thanked her for the help. He explained that he gets tired every time he uses the artifact, and the girl noticed his amazing ability to transform, so he introduced himself and asked her name. It turned out her name was Dea Kuretsu. She said it was time for her to go and asked what Ratsu planned to do next, to which he replied that he wanted to rest. She said goodbye and left while Ratu silently watched her go, and he could not shake the thought that throughout his life someone had always supported and saved him. Now he had finally decided to protect the people who had become dear to him. The guild hall was crowded with people and artifacts from all corners, but suddenly a dissatisfied buzzing sounded. Everyone noticed a little girl who appeared among those present. She stepped forward and loudly announced that she was the examiner Janet Chamo, and despite her small stature, it was precisely because of the blessing ceremony that she had already earned the right to be an adult. One man grumbled irritably at the simple-minded worker, and she raised the doll in front of everyone and announced. Their task was to find this doll in the forest, so the people immediately became lively and started talking, saying it was too easy. The examiner warned that the forest was full of kobolds who were used to stealing other people's things, and that most likely they would take these dolls as well. The sign about a dangerous zone full of monsters meant that this task would test both their attentiveness during the search and their combat skills. The examiner explained there were many other monsters in the forest, and they were the ones who decided whether the participants would stay alive, adding that the number of dolls was limited. At that moment, Ratu realized his team would compete not only with the forest but also among the participants. She reminded that killing people was a crime, but at the same time did not forbid repelling attacks from renegades. Renegades are called those who turn their artifacts into tools for their own criminal plans. She continued explaining the rules. During the exam, participants were allowed to cooperate. They could form a group, but each was obliged to find their own doll before the time ended. The boy wondered if he could even form a group until the girl sharply declared the exam open and counted down 2 hours for them. One boy reached out to another with a proposal to unite. The other nodded, and after shaking hands, they began calling each other brothers. He was calculating in his head whether he could join another group with his rusty saber, when suddenly he heard voices nearby that interrupted his thoughts. Dea approached a group of girls and asked permission to join them. The girls laughed when she called herself useless and refused to accept her into their company. Ratsu remembered how everyone once laughed at him and mocked him exactly the way they were behaving now. The leader of that group stated that their condemnation concerned the extermination of demons and that Dea would not succeed in doing anything with a sword. The girls continued to mock her, insisting that she wouldn't even have the strength to knock down a single doll. The girl pressed Dea psychologically and insisted that if no one addressed her, she shouldn't rely on people, even those who grew up in the same village. Suddenly, the group leader burst out shouting at Dea and ordered her to get away, raising his hand to slap her, but at the last moment, Ratsu stopped his movement. Ratsu pushed the leader's hand away and sharply said that this was too much. Then Dea asked who he was at all and why he was interfering. Dea exclaimed in surprise, and the brunette turned to Ratsu with a question whether he knew her and if so, what he wanted. Ratsu looked at Dea, called her by name, and invited her to join him. The crowd, holding their breath, watched what was happening, and the girl who had just tried to hit Dea looked at them confusedly, as if not understanding what exactly was going on. Ratsu smiled and addressed Dea. He was convinced that they were perfectly compatible with each other. The brunette was clearly dissatisfied while 2 boys quietly whispered about Dea and Ratsu, laughing at them with a hint of superiority. The examiner addressed 2 people and said that this year the participants look very promising. They replied that there are dangerous ones among them, and the girl added that she would support those who are inclined to take risks. 30 minutes passed since the start of the test in the forest. The trees suddenly sparkled as if warning about something dangerous that had almost reached the limit. The girl and the boy were walking slowly along the forest path, breathing in the coolness between the trees and admiring the beauty of nature, imagining how this corner could become a popular tourist location if not for the monsters. The man told her that it would be wise to avoid fights with monsters, but immediately warned, for them everything would be much more difficult, so he strongly advised to find the kobolds as soon as possible, and the girl remained silent. The man mentally decided that she simply did not want to talk to him, and from this his irritation mixed with anxiety. The girl addressed Ratsu and directly asked what exactly he meant when he said that they were compatible. She froze in place, blushing from embarrassment, and only then did the boy finally realize that he had completely and entirely misunderstood her reaction. He had just begun to explain why they were compatible when the girl suddenly shouted, "Monster!" The monster jumped right at Ratsu, but the girl managed to cover him with her sword, taking the blow on the blade. The man drew his sword and with one move cut the monster in half, then explained, "While she covers, he can safely kill monsters, so they are perfectly suited to each other." Ratsu warned, if he uses the weapon for more than 30 minutes, he will get a headache, and if he drags it out even longer, he might go insane. The girl embarrassedly doubted that she would protect him as before, because she used to be a crybaby and everyone laughed at her. He approached her closely and said that although her artifact does not kill monsters, she is still kind and always comes to the aid of strangers. Smiling, he looked into her eyes and confidently said that she is strong. Suddenly, the air trembled and someone solemnly used magic, casting a spell directly on them. An explosive fire flared up, thick smoke burst upward, and the boy and girl coughed, trying to see through the haze. Among the smoke appeared the same girl who wanted to hit Dea, and as it turned out, her name was Amesty. She ordered the girl to just hide, and then it was time for Amesty to crush her without mercy. Dea, pressing against her shield and hiding her breath behind it, asked what exactly her opponent was going to do. The other girl replied that hitting renegades for dolls is allowed, after which the 2 attackers slyly objected that no doll had been taken yet and aimlessly pointed with their fingers somewhere behind. A kobold jumped out at them from exactly there, and Dia immediately covered herself with the shield, raising a barrier in the path of the monster. Although there was only one kobold, he relentlessly, with all his might, tried to break through the girl's shield, pushing it wave after wave. The man called out to Dia and sharply pointed at the doll on the kobold's belt, as if hinting that this was what needed to be taken. The girls spoke as if they had already recognized the thieves in Radu and Dia, and, hunting for that very doll, quickly brought them to the moment when a decisive step could be taken to take it. Amsti said there was no choice and ordered her friends to attack Dea and Radu, so the two girls immediately launched an attack, breaking the silence with a sharp movement. The man instantly understood. It was all deliberate, and the girls simultaneously unleashed ice and fire magic, mixing cold steel and heat into a combined strike. Radu and Dea watched the attackers tensely, and from the other side a kobold was already running towards them, its footsteps growing louder as if urging time forward. The girls rushed into the attack, striking with their artifacts, and the space exploded with a dazzling wave of light. But no one was harmed. The shield of Dea managed to activate in time, and the kobold and Radu, stunned, exchanged glances. Radu immediately realized the kobold was about to try to snatch his sword, so he sharply pulled his hand back, saving the weapon from dangerous proximity. At that very moment, Imezdi again directed her magic against Dea and Radu, changing the course of the battle with one precise spell. Dea's shield remained steadfast, deflecting every blow from the girl, and Imezdi laughed mockingly, as if victory cannot be achieved when everything is reduced to defense alone. The man, looking anxiously at Dea, asks if she is okay, and she nods with relief, assuring him everything is fine. Imezdi, grinning boldly, sarcastically mutters that they cannot defeat this monster, but immediately asserts, it's all good because they really are the perfect pair. She tightens her grip on the weapon and talks about the shield that reliably protects and the rusty sword that seems it will still come in handy. Suddenly, the kobold lunges at Amsti, and the girls notice it at the same moment and prepare to strike, raising the tension in the air to the maximum. At that very moment, the man's sword seemed to free itself from rust. The blade flashed, and he was ready to strike against the kobold. The girls rush into the attack, but the kobold sharply jumps back, bypassing them and freezes, preparing to strike from behind. But suddenly Ratsu delivers an unexpected blow. The girls break off their attack, as if rooted to the spot, and stare at him in surprise. The kobold's artifacts and the artifacts given to the girls split in two after a sharp cut, and the doll holding the kobold falls helplessly to the ground. Furious, Amsti throws a question in his face. How did he do it? She shows that the girls had C-rank artifacts and demanding demands to name who he is. The young man replies that he is the same participant as she is, and that Dia also belongs to them. Amsti clenches her fists, and the boy, without stopping, says that if Dea were nearby, she would definitely protect them. He incessantly scolds the girls and lists all the virtues of Dinaya, but Amsti breaks into a scream and orders him, be silent. Amsti fiercely raises her voice and directly states that he does not know her feelings at all. Amsti and Ratsu look at each other for a long time, and then Ratsu suggests their artifacts can be repaired in the church, and he will lead them to the city. The girls are even more surprised. The boy regrets destroying their artifacts, but Amsti does not let him finish and sharply drives him away. Get out. The girls leave, not accepting the boy's help. He watches them with his gaze and calls Amsti, but she does not even look back. The doll lies on the ground, and the boy leans down to carefully lift her from the dust. He tries to cheer her up with warm words, explaining that this very doll will help her become a traveler. But Dea suddenly begins to cry. She wanted everything to remain as it was before. The boy asks in surprise what happened to them. Dea tells about her friendship with Amsti from the very beginning and about how Amsti taught her everything, even though she is as tearful as Dea. Amsti helped the girl with everything, explained lessons, supported her during training, and seemed to be a true sister to her, while the friends nearby discussed what had happened, and Amsti silently nodded, keeping her thoughts far and too clear. The girl bitterly and resentfully thought that it should have been her turn. She remembered how for years she invented her own ways to run faster, how she learned not to give up in fights, and how she insisted on fast learning to catch up with everyone earlier. She always worked harder than others, recognized every pause in others' moods, and tried to befriend everyone she met. Her belief was simple: it was enough just to become better, and then loneliness would no longer catch up with her. Then in the church she received a drunken bracelet chain, and everyone around considered her the best, and Dea was so happy that she glowed with joy. She thanked Dea and wished her luck, after which girls approached her and warmly greeted her. Suddenly, she heard someone receive an immortal shield which barely flickered in the air, as if magic had become reality. Near the altar stood Dea with a huge immortal shield, and she looked at Amesty, not believing what was happening right now. She awkwardly stepped back a step and apologized to the girl, feeling guilt tightening her chest. The girl asked Dea what exactly she meant when she said, "sorry," and Amesty could not understand why Dea said it, and not her years of training suddenly seemed useless. She sharply cast aside pity for the one who took everything from her. Reality returned as soon as the friends asked what to do with the broken artifacts. The girl calmed them down and promised to quickly fix everything and pass the exam, confidently saying that they would definitely become travelers, and then sincerely thanked them for staying close. They talked again about the boy whose sword changed, and about the emotions that awakened in each of them then, and Amesty ordered her friends not to delay and to move on. Suddenly some strange shadow or creature flared up behind them, and Amesty let out a scream, demanding that her friends manage to dodge at the last moment. They barely managed to jump aside and avoid the deadly attack. Yet the creature scratched them and there was no mercy. The girls' hands were covered with deep, huge scratches. Before them stood a cat-like monster. It was licking blood from its claws and with a look full of disappointment, as if reproaching the girls for not even noticing it. Amesty froze, sinking into herself, and clung with a frightened gaze to the demon, trembling with fear. Dea whispered to the rats, telling them about her desire to be friends with Amesty again like before when they were close, and she dreamed of becoming a traveler together with her childhood friend. The man gently encourages the girl and explains that she does not need to return. They can go through the world together and become travelers. He offers her words of support, suggesting she become his friend, not his sister, and the girl, staring blankly, freezes for a moment, confused. The boy emphasizes once again that she is no longer his little sister who always follows behind, but now his friend, and he stands beside her shoulder to shoulder, so the girl noticeably brightens and thanks Ratsu. The girl concentrates hard, puzzling over how the demon appears right during the attack. It turns out that while her skill activates, it is difficult for her to move actively. Suddenly, the girl swings sharply and hits the demon, but it jumps back from the shockwave, betraying surprise as if it did not expect such a trick. Amesty asks her friends to leave while she firmly holds the demon at a distance, but the girls do not want to leave her alone, and she insists strongly. They need to go because nearby they will only distract her. When Amesty tries to hold her position, the demon suddenly strikes her again, cutting through space with a shockwave. Dea abruptly stops half a step, and Ratsu instantly asks why she stopped so unexpectedly. Inside her rises a troubling feeling as if something terrible has already happened to Amesty, and she only briefly tells Ratsu that she needs to go. In response, Amesty's friends immediately rush to her anxiously, quickening their steps and ready to pull her out of danger. The demon licked the blood from her nails, and Amesty quickly calmed her friends, assuring them that these were only scratches, after which he asked them to step back. The girl screamed for them to run, and her friends with reddened eyes full of tears panicked and scattered in different directions. The demon brazenly said that her escape was futile, because he would catch up with them and kill them anyway. The girl blocked the demon's path, not letting him go further, and pointed to his weak spot, trying to buy a moment. But the demon appeared next to her in a second and began to strangle the girl, squeezing her with his tail. The demon asked the girl if it was about the weakness that forced her to come out of invisibility during an attack. The demoness explained that she compensates for this weakness with speed, and after killing Amesty, she will catch up with the twins and kill them. Clenching the artifact in her fist, the girl thought she needed to buy time, so she asked the demon why he attacks people. The demoness replied that she receives a blessing by killing people just as people receive a blessing by destroying demons, but there was another reason why she killed people. The demoness loved to play with someone's life. She lunged forward, scratching the girl's face with her claws, and ordered her to cry and beg before death. The enraged demon, offended by the girl's silence, decided to end her life and rushed into an attack, sincerely believing that time was lost. Her bracelet was fully charged with magical power, and she struck the demon with a powerful electric shock, making the air crackle with discharges. The blow pushed the demon several meters back, and a thick column of smoke rose into the sky, obscuring the place of the clash. When the smoke cleared, there was no trace of the demon before the girl, and she exhaled with relief, deciding that she had bought a moment for her friends. But the next moment, the demon's voice sounded right next to her. he assured that it is the lightning that grants her speed, so her magic will not work against him. The demon rushed at the girl with a run and pierced her arm through with claws, leaving a torn, bloody gash. The girl let out a scream, and the demon, as if fueled by her fear, came alive. He ordered her to scream even louder and promised to tear her to pieces for every sound, while Amsti mentally begged that her friends had already managed to escape. The demon leaned toward her and coldly declared that he would start with the limbs, while the girl prepared with trembling hands for another flash of lightning. The girl cried, and in her thoughts, instead of a voice, only one loud plea broke out: "Help!" Suddenly someone ran swiftly from the darkness toward her, waving their arms and screaming hoarsely, as if they were only a moment late. The demon lunged forward at Amst and with a dull blow crashed into the shield, and Dea hurriedly began to calm the frightened girl. She held the shield firmly in front of her and promised Amst that she would definitely protect her. The monster laughed gleefully at the new prey and immediately used the magic of black flame. But the next attack attempt again hit the shield Ratsu, and two of Amst's friends ran away in panic from the path. One of the girls began to apologize while the other calmed her and asked to provide first aid to Amsti. Looking at them, Dea, with a quiet burden in her heart, recalled her bad premonition. As it turned out, the girls on the way encountered Dea and Ratsu and told them everything that had happened, after which they bandaged Amsti's wound, and Amsti assured that she survived. She asked Dea why she saved her, since Amsti had been talking about her all his life. Dea just smiled and replied that she did it because they are friends. Amsti breaks into sobs, but just then the demon appears again from the darkness and angrily asks the girl about her friends. The demon wanted to see tears of pain, not tears of silence. He lunged towards them, offering to tear her friend apart right before her eyes. But suddenly Ratsu's sword struck with claws in a clash, stopping the demon's assault with a sweeping arc and splashes of dark power. The demon orders him to step aside and not interfere, but the boy anxiously just asks to be allowed to stay and fight. A fierce battle flares between them. Echoes of dark thunder spells and flashes of black flame tear the silence between strikes. But all in vain. The boy parries all her attacks and lands precise blows himself, and the demon barely manages to dodge until one strike cuts off his tail. The demon screams in pain and, consumed by furious rage, vows to make the rats pay for this. Rat still has neither combat knowledge nor experience, but with this sword he must defeat the demon. However, a headache pierces him again and the boy drops the weapon from his hands. The hero grabbed his head while the demon wondered why the artifact suddenly changed its appearance and why the same hero was holding his head. The demon assumed that this artifact had a limited duration of effect. The demon laughed, calling him funny, and lunged into an attack, swinging his whole body. But Dea again parried the sword strike, and from this stubborn counterattack the demon grew even angrier. The demon promised to smash Dea's artifact, but Aimfist firmly objected. It was impossible because its strength was infinite. The shield itself was called Eternal Shield. The demon could not believe it and became wildly outraged when he saw that Dea had managed to obtain such a powerful artifact. The demon declared that the boy's sword and the girl's shield were disgusting, and it would not save them anyway, after which he began to disappear, and Dea closed her eyes, preparing for the strike. But as soon as the demon vanished, he suddenly reappeared again to attack, but Dea easily parried his attempt. The demon became even more furious. He disappeared a second time and immediately appeared out of nowhere for a new strike, but Dea again managed to parry the attack. The sweaty demon sharply asked who they were, since they could not even be called adventurers, and the rats at that moment finally realized Dea's defense was no accident. It was not that Dea foresaw the monster before everyone else, but that she glimpsed the future. The demon vanished again into the darkness, and the rats gathered nearby asked the girl to point out exactly where the enemy was located. Dea closed her eyes and stretched out her hand in the direction where the demon was supposed to appear, and as soon as he emerged and was already swinging for an attack, the rats instantly struck him. But the demon dodged the blow and with one leap moved away to a distance, and the rats realized he was incredibly fast. The malicious demon promised to slaughter everyone to the end. The man grimly thought that even if he managed to win, he would not withstand the pace, and Aimfist again rushed to attack. She strikes the demon with a powerful lightning-fast blow, and the air is split by a flash of light. The demon suddenly shouted at her, reproaching that she had already promised. Nothing will come of it, but the girl only broke out with a scream, "The time has come." At that moment, Ratsu appeared behind the demon and delivered a deadly blow, moving precisely and without hesitation. Her opponent was cut in half by the sword. The demon vanished into the dark void, leaving nothing behind. The girls froze in amazement, and Dea, shining with admiration, told Ratsu that he skillfully dealt with the monster. But he said it was thanks to Dee, and then, looking at Amesty, added, "It is also her merit." He sincerely thanked her, and the girl was embarrassed, not knowing what to answer. Suddenly, a signal sounded in the air, and everyone understood. The exam time was over. The boy looked at the doll and froze before the choice either to become a traveler himself or to give this chance to Dea. In the forest, the boys are searching for the girl. They must find her before she reaches the city, and she herself carefully watched them, hiding behind the trees. She was wounded, but by using restorative magic, she quickly healed the wound to a barely noticeable scratch. She stood silently, clenching her nerves, and gazed hard at the distant city, as if expecting something there. The boy approached Ratu and asked to meet with them after the exam to talk about the demon, and Rat agreed, staring intently at the doll in his hands. He examined the doll silently for a long time, trying to understand what to do next, until Dea called him. He stood up to Dea, carefully placed the doll in her hands, and said that she would become a traveler. The girl stubbornly objected that he was the one who defeated the demon and took the doll, and the boy quietly replied, if Dea hadn't happened that day, he wouldn't have made it to these adventures. While the girl was defending the stranger without any hesitation, the boy observed her courage and was sure that her kindness could save many. He quickly grabbed her hands, politely greeted her, and just then Amesty glanced sideways and asked how long this freak intended to hold the girl's hand. Amesty stopped, looking at both of them, and directly asked if they were a couple or just random acquaintances in the same crowd. The boy suddenly blushed deeply and was embarrassed when the girl asked her friend to go rest, explaining that she was injured, and Amesty said she was almost 2 years old but still decided to give her the doll first. Ratsu caught the doll, and the girl explained that she was borrowing it because it was no longer needed by 3 people. Dale glanced at Amesty and was glowing with admiration, as if he couldn't take his eyes off her. Amesty told Dea not to forget about her, promised she would catch up soon, and Dea enthusiastically vowed to wait. While they watched the girls leave, someone approached them and pointed out that they were the only 2 who had not yet completed the procedure. That was Janet. She apologized for allowing the demon to invade their territory, expressed gratitude to them, and warned that from now on their lives would become more dangerous. After that, she declared Ratsu and Dai adventurers. Later, they were sitting in a tavern drinking, and the girl tried to stop him, saying it was too expensive, but the boy pulled out his wallet and said that maybe he had enough money. Returning from the guild, he remembered overhearing. This was said as an apology, and the guild allowed Amesty and her friends to take the exam in a week. Dea was on cloud 9 with joy, and that boy promised her he would no longer worry about them. They could not become travelers together, but the girl promised that someday they would definitely have a joint adventure. Ratsu leaned toward Dai and said that he also had a person for whom he once promised to become an adventurer. He admitted that he was once weak and that boy always had his back, so Dai immediately understood everything and asked if Ratsu wanted to join him. Ratsu shook his head and replied that he was not ready yet, because first he had to raise his own level and only then move forward. Dai, recalling the promotion exam, declared that she wanted to go beyond the white level, and Ratsu was genuinely surprised by these words. She explained that there is Shurigane Cave, a place where only travelers who have already reached a level above white could enter. Ratsu asked why the girl was so eager to go there, and she honestly replied that the main reason for her dream to become an adventurer was that very mysterious cave. The girl confessed that her parents had entered the cave and never returned, so now she wanted to go there to finally find out what happened to them. The man froze halfway, almost not daring to ask about her parents, but Ratsu suddenly stood up and cut off his question, steering the conversation in another direction. She suggested they join forces and said that they were a perfect couple, but the man was silent at first, then suddenly burst out laughing, and Ratsu asked embarrassedly why he was laughing. With each of his words, the girl blushed more and more, and he said that he had heard this somewhere before, then stood up, thanked her, and said he was incredibly happy, then began to explain why he himself became a traveler. He became a traveler to be a hero and save people, then quietly asked if his goal was really right, to which the girl smiled and confidently replied that everything was fine. In response, they promised him they would do everything possible to become great adventurers. The examiner patiently waited in the corridor, looking out for Ratsu and Dea. The boy and girl approached, politely greeted the examiner, and asked how they could help her. she shyly admitted that because of a demon she forgot to give them something extremely important. She placed 2 books before them and briefly said that was all, after which Ratsu and Dea took them, looked at each other in surprise and asked what exactly they meant. As it turned out, these were proofs of fulfilling the request for the traveler's diary, so now they could collect rewards and place stamps. Ratsu asked again about the brand, and Jenny explained that by collecting a certain amount, they would be able to take a promo test, and Ratsu and Dea immediately got excited about this idea. Jenny explained that this town was intended for beginner adventurers. Their requests were simple and the rewards and stamps were small. She immediately offered them a perfect local task, to find a dog, and Ratsu did not at all believe that such a trifle could be considered an ideal test. Radu and Dea hoped for a small reward, but this was only the beginning, because the examiners advised them to change their base of operations to get more expensive tasks. The woman calmly but with clear caution told about strange assignments that were equally performed by both the copper class and adventurers from the black class. Jenny recalled the disappearance of the traveler. Dea began to demand more details, but Ratsu only slightly shook his head. He decided to first start searching for the dog. A little later, Ratu, lowering her gaze, apologized to Dea for accepting the task without prior consent. The girl waved it off, saying it was nothing serious, but still asked why he acted that way, and the boy replied he was interested in this very request as soon as it arrived. The dog they were searching for disappeared in the morning near Nanashiki Forest, right where they were taking the exam, and it would be bad if the impatient owner rushed to look for it alone. The boy suggested that Janet might have assigned them this task specifically so that they would look more closely at everything, but Day sharply stopped him. Hiding behind bushes, they stealthily peeked at the clearing from where a strange rustle came, and kobolds were moving there. But the kobolds noticed them and rushed to attack, so Dea shouted to Ratsu to immediately look back. The kobolds closed in a ring around the boy and girl, tightly surrounding them from all sides. All the kobolds together prepared to rush forward, ready for a sudden attack. Ratsu began to think if the kobolds were alone, defeating them would not be particularly difficult, but against such a crowd Day would hardly cope and protect them, so he encouraged Day and promised that he had a plan. Iron claws grew from his palms, the same as those of the demon they had just defeated. Gareth exclaimed that the young man had used artifact synthesis. Cobalt stopped in confusion, and Ratsu sharply summoned the magic of black flame. He combined 2 types of magic. He infused the black fire with the dark power of lightning, and the flame flared with prickly discharges. Day was stunned by what she saw, as Ratsu struck the kobolds and dealt with them in a single blow. But suddenly the sword jerked Ratsu with a sharp electric impulse, and the girl anxiously asked if he was okay. When Ratsu came to, she asked what exactly had happened and began to explain that his artifact had a unique ability to synthesize weapons and skills. It was possible to embed 2 different skills into one artifact, and the young man wanted to try both at the same time to test the limits of his tool. The girl replied that it was indeed an unusual artifact, and Ratsu thought, the brain can handle activating 2 magics, but the body had already suffered from the previous surge. Hiding behind thick bushes, the girl with a small dog in her arms watched motionlessly, and as soon as the dog barked, Radu and Day immediately raised their heads and became alert. The girl broke away and ran, and Day and Ratsu, quickening their pace, followed the loud sounds of escape, glancing between the branches. Then suddenly the girl's legs gave way and she fell into the dust. Dea instantly ran up, became concerned about her condition, and asked if she was okay, but Ratsu sharply stopped her with his hand. He restrained Dea by gripping her wrist and stared intently at the girl, as if trying to confirm what he felt. This girl really was a demon, and from just one glance at her shadow and the strange change in Radu and Ratsu's behavior, they sensed danger. Dea noticed that the young man was looking at her attentively, as if she did not resemble a demon, and he was already hesitating whether to report this to the guild. Demons were enemies, but before him stood a girl indistinguishable from a human if she wore a hat, so the youth wondered if it made sense to kill her from now on. Since childhood, he had read about heroes and that demons were enemies of humans, so he had no doubts about this truth. The demons they had encountered before really posed a threat to humans, but now his inner world was turned upside down by doubts about Dea herself. He held his breath and asked himself, is the girl standing before him a demon, and is she truly his enemy? Seeing the artifact in the traveler's hands, the demon trembled even more and retreated, fear flashing in its eyes before him. The young man himself trembled with fear and doubt. Until this moment, demons had already attacked him, but now he felt no open hostility in that gaze or aura, and the little dog barked nervously. He dared to reach out his hand to the artifact, but suddenly froze as if thoughts pressed him into a dead pause where every movement seemed dangerous. Memories of previous demons who had already tried to kill him flashed before his eyes, and his heart gave a heavy beat in the silence. He suddenly became curious about how a real hero would behave in his place and how Ruby would react to this choice. He dismissed all doubts, decided to figure it out himself, but at that very moment someone called him. The demon, tightly closing his eyes, begged for help, and Ratsu, who was already reaching for his sword, abruptly stopped. He carefully extended his hand to the demon, as if letting him know that the danger was over. He sincerely apologized to her for scaring her, and the girl sighed with relief and stood up. Dia joyfully noted that this was the same little dog, and the demon explained. He stayed close because the dog looked lost. Radu asked the demon what she was doing here and if she was lost, but she looked away and answered no. The young man said it was dangerous for her to be there alone and offered to escort her home, but the demon replied bitterly and confidently that she had no home. And since she had no home, she could not be lost, and these words made the girl feel eerie. The demon released the dog and ordered it to go with the travelers, but the little dog did not want to leave him and stubbornly ran back to the demon. The dog knocked Ratu down and began licking the demon, who laughed and asked him to stop immediately. Radu and Dia also laughed at such a cute scene, and Radu suggested taking the demon to the Travelers Guild. The demon asked again, and the young man assured her that they would hide who she really was, so they already began to guess how to secretly find her home. But the demon stopped them, gently saying that everything was fine and asked to be left alone. Suddenly a spear flashed toward the demon, and Ratsu reacted lightning fast, shielding her with his own body. The boy and the demon fell to the ground, and Dea screamed in fright, watching how everything became too dangerous. Ratsu asked Dea if she was okay, and she replied that she was fine, but the little dog was badly wounded. The demon asked confusedly why this boy still helped her, since Dea was also a demon, and that seemed strange. The young man explained that despite Dea being a demon, they were not enemies, and at that moment memories flashed like a whirlwind in the demon's mind. Wasting no time, the demon used restorative magic, extending his hands over the wounded dog so that Ratsu would heal as quickly as possible. Ratsu stood up completely healthy, and Dea stared at the demon in surprise. He could not understand why his ability of foresight did not work. An unfamiliar boy approached them and, swinging roughly, ordered them to get out of the way immediately. It was Helio. He stood next to his own group of friends, carefully examining the travelers. His companions sharply asked who exactly had attacked them and why this assault was directed against innocent travelers, and Helio replied that Ratsu was not a traveler. Ratsu said unequivocally that Helio himself had also become a traveler, and this truth made Helio laugh loudly, after which he asked if the guild was so short of people that they would take them into the ranks. Helio demanded a clear answer from the young man for defending the demon, and his tone was full of pressure and suspicion. Ratsu replied that it was just a child and she posed no danger, but Helio instantly burst out shouting and attacked him, reproaching him for not understanding that humans and demons are enemies, given his knowledge from books. Helio's companion asked if Ratsu was okay, then explained that their goal was to pursue the demon because they suspected him of involvement in the man's disappearance. Ratsu and Day recalled the words of Miss Janet, who had already spoken about something similar, and at that moment the demon suddenly grabbed Ratsu's hand and began assuring him that it was not him. Helio declared that if the young man did not hand over the demon, he would deal with him right there, without further talk. He aimed his spear at those present, already preparing to attack, and his friends tried to stop him, but Helio coldly ordered them to shut up. With a fierce grimace, Helio declared that he would kill the demon with his own hands. Ratsu asked Day to protect the demon, and he himself stood in Helio's way, so Helio ordered him to get out of the way once more for the last time. The young man grabbed his rusty sword and sharply replied that he refused to obey. Helio and Ratsu clashed in a brutal fight, and the tension in the air became almost tangible. Just as Ratsu was about to strike with his sword, Helio treacherously punched him right in the face. The man fell to the ground, and Helio, losing control, began shouting at him, insulting and kicking him. Friends tried to stop Helio, but he was not going to stop until Dee jumped up and sharply shouted at him to stop. Helio convulsively froze in place, looked at Dee in surprise, and said that someone was still protecting him. He covered his face with his hand and disdainfully said that it annoys him to see such a miserable freak, to which Dare replied, "He puts everyone below himself." The boy asked Dare if she understood whom she was talking to, and she honestly said she did not know, and without looking away, asked who he was. He raised the spear, swung to strike, but the rats timely raised their sword and stopped his attack. Helio was impressed. The artifact was unexpectedly changed, and the rats asked Dea to protect the demon. One of Helio's comrades whispered to his companion that they had a chance to catch the demon, but the latter sharply stopped him. Helio froze in a fighting stance, convinced, if the weapon changed externally, it does not at all mean that something changed inside. Bullets began to weigh Helio's strength, and he knew in advance that he only had 3 years of combat experience behind him. He knew that with Helio it would not work to drag time by force, so he refused direct pressure and summoned magic to change the course of the battle. In his sword flickered a masterful black lightning. Dark crimson discharges tore through the blade as if the weapon itself wanted to break free. The first attacker won the victory, and the pack of rats synchronously moved forward to where the Helio artifact lay, to destroy it to the last. Helios laughs boldly, shouting through the scream that they are different, and pushes aside the defense, preparing for a quick, decisive attack. Yet Rat is the first to manage to strike. His movement is lightning fast, precise, and the Helio artifact crumbles to pieces under the dark power of the sword. Helio's friends were stunned by what they saw. The man apologized to Helio, but Helio did not even move. He asks the rats if they really think they defeated Helio by breaking the artifact, then grabs the boy by the shirt. He throws him to the ground and, pressing closer, prepares to strike, contemptuously calling him trash. Helio says he is defending the enemy, and Rat explains that she helped him, asking if they consider her an enemy just because she is a demon. The demon nervously looks at them until Helio stops yelling at the boy and demands that he say these words to the people whose families were killed by demons. Helio, in a barking, sharp tone, lashes out at Rat for intending to betray the people for the demon, adding a reproachful reminder. Once Rat himself dreamed of becoming a hero. Rat responds by shouting and insists that he helps everyone who asks for help, so no one has the right to accuse him of betrayal. Helio grabs his artifact, raises it high for a devastating blow, and declares Rat his enemy, preparing to attack without hesitation. But at that very moment, people in dark robes appear and forcibly intervene to stop their clash, breaking the moment before the attack. Guild staff immediately remind about the rule that adventurers are forbidden to fight each other, and warn, everyone involved in a fight will be punished. A crowd gathered near the church and people were murmuring, whispering that the deserter had just been caught. Jenny noticed the commotion and turned sharply because Ratsu and Helio were standing right in front of her. Miss Jenny explained that the matter concerns travelers who use artifacts for fighting, and this had already been seen by the guild workers. She looked carefully at both and asked if Ratsu and Helio had anything to say. Helio nervously pointed a finger at Ratsu and loudly declared that he was the deserter. Ratsu recounts to everyone how he came to protect the demon, and Miss Jenny asks if it is true, so Ratsu lowers his head and confirms what was said. Dea asks Ratsu to tell everything verbatim, step by step, exactly how it happened. Helio turns away from him and says he hoped Ratsu would have the courage to fight back, but he sharply calls him a weakling who still cannot say aloud what he thinks, and at that moment, one of Helio's friends sides with Ratsu and admits that Helio was the first to attack. His friend, the second one, looks at him with disapproval and declares that he is betraying them. The man says in a depressed tone that it is also his fault, because if they were true friends, they would not stand aside and sit with their arms crossed. The worker opened the door and Jenny immediately asked if the interrogation was already finished, but he came close and quietly whispered something in her ear. Climbing the stairs, Jenny replied that the stories of Ratsutsu and the demons coincide and then punished Helio's group. She suspended them for a week and confiscated their artifacts. One of Helio's friends sharply grabs him by the hair and another pushes him with a foot, urging him to move forward. Helio tells him that he doesn't have time to play adventurer and, turning around, adds that Ratsutsu will not become like her. Dea looked at them confusedly, while Jenny opened another door and called into the room. The girl asked why he doesn't fight back, but the boy just laughed, and Diva wondered what exactly amused him. Miss Jenny abruptly stopped, shifted her gaze to them, and seemed to study their reactions in silence. The man further explained that it was not about unwillingness to respond, he truly wanted to help the demon. The examiner measured every word and asked if he would really dare to become a renegade for the sake of the demon. The man nodded in response, and Miss Jenny quickly reached for the door handle. It seemed she was about to open it. A demon was sitting in the room, and Miss Jenny loudly announced that the girl had nothing to do with the disappearances of people. The hikers smiled and rejoiced, but Jenny abruptly interrupted their cheerful moment, warning that there was another problem. As it became clear the demon's life hangs by a thread, other demons began hunting specifically for her. At that moment, Ratsu finally understood the real reason why the demon was hiding in the forest. Miss Jenny solemnly handed the travelers a sealed package and ordered them to deliver the demon directly to the guild headquarters. By the stone fountain, Helio sat among friends, and his disheveled hair and hardened gaze revealed that he was still boiling from his punishment. He was sharply asked how much longer he intended to grumble, and Helio angrily responded with a question why they had not turned to them. Helio's friend silently shook his head, showing a torn piece of paper, and said that this was exactly what he wanted to use to earn recognition. On the paper was Ruby in the news about how she destroyed one of the 7 great demons, and Helio stared at the headline with rage, as if it personally offended him. At night, the travelers and the demon left the city, whispering that there were very few people here and almost no noise, so even if someone noticed them, they would suspect nothing. The guild headquarters was located in one of the largest cities of Clearland, and the demon asked if there were many adventurers there, to which Dea answered affirmatively. They needed to meet with the guild leader and get permission to live in the city, and the demon trembled with fear, but the travelers calmed her and asked if Dea had explained everything to her. She nodded and confirmed, so then they suddenly realized that they still had not introduced themselves to each other. Ratsu said his name and Dea hers. Shidoran Torai shyly stepped forward and introduced herself, and Dea and Ratsu immediately began to approach closer to get properly acquainted. Dea asks where she once lived, and the girl quietly replies, Mount Kokuyo. The girl, lost in memories, bitterly says that this is a place where everything continuously chars and burns. The man sighs gloomily, admits that living in such a dwelling is probably very hard, and hopes that she never returns there. The girl is silent for a long time, then tries to say something important, and tears immediately appear in her eyes. The man quickly realizes he has touched a sore spot and immediately changes the subject, suggesting they have a snack. Ratsu prepares to set up camp, while Dea is tasked with preparing dinner for everyone. They sit by the fire and eat dinner. To Ratsu and Dea's questions about the dish, Rin only replies that everything is fine, and this makes Ratsu increasingly doubtful. While Rin was eating, Ratsu noticed her artifact and asked to see what exactly it does or how it looks. Shuren cast a strange, warning look at him, and Ratsu immediately spoke up, assuring that Rin suspects nothing. Dea also began to calm the girl, explaining that Ratsu is simply an artifact enthusiast and often examines other people's things, then gets embarrassed, quickly apologizes, and changes the subject. He started asking Dea when exactly she first took up this and why she even brings up that topic, then honestly admitted he is interested specifically in artifacts. The demon burst out laughing, and Ratsu and Dea, having stopped arguing, both looked at Dea, smiling as if the tension had finally eased. Dea extends the ring, and the man, politely asking for permission again, takes it from her palms. He carefully examines the characteristics of the dark ring: level 1 artifact, ring magic restoration, and skill photosynthesis. The boy did not find it strange that the guild recognized Dea as safe. Level 1 meant she had not killed anyone yet, and Ratsu was glad because he was the one who saved her. He explains that demons are given artifacts to kill people, and at the same time emphasizes Shidoran's healing magic was extremely useful. He again stresses that the sacred jewel saved the dog and healed it, so this Shidoran power was truly worthy of the Shidoran. The girl is embarrassed by his words, blushes, and quietly says she will go to sleep, comfortably settling on the log, while Da offers her to get into the tent. Ratsu tells Dea that they also need to rest and that they will take turns standing guard, and Dea, hastily calling Ratsu, recalls that she heard from Janet about a special zone for protection from demons. Dea asks if the boy knows anything about this zone, but he only shakes his head and replies that he knows nothing about it. Dea explains that this place was created by the guild order to protect harmless demons, and that, most likely, both demons and humans could peacefully coexist there. Ratsu asks where it is located, but the girl confidently says that such a place does not exist. Then the boy grabs his head and mutters that if it did exist, he would really need it. He asks why she brought it up, and she defends herself, almost stating that Ratsu also cares about this girl. It was not built, it was only planned, and that means there were people like Ratsu and Dia who care about safe demons. Dia continues, even if people think she is mistaken, she herself believes in her path and does the right thing. Ratsu brightened his face, sincerely thanking Dia, and promised that he would definitely find a home for Rin as soon as these words sounded in their whisper. Rin smiled in her sleep. The next day the travelers made their way through the mountains and crossed the water, and Rin remained cheerful and joyful, almost not hiding her good mood. Finally they stopped and, looking at the route they had traveled, realized that they had covered a considerable distance that day. In the water swam Dia and Rin. Rin asked Ratsu if he would dive with them, but Dia, flushed with excitement, explained that he would not be able to join. The young man was gathering and packing his things and thinking about truly dangerous situations that might await ahead. Then Dia and Rin approached him and, apologizing, admitted that they were delayed. Suddenly, from the dark depths of the path, a whole pack of monsters emerged, as if from the very shadow. A demon that looked like a crocodile with twisted fangs and disgusting scales solemnly declared that he had found Shitorin. The girl and the travelers froze in horror, staring at the multitude of demons that encircled the space around them. The monster promised Ratsu a quick death if he gave up Shitorin, and at the same time coldly warned, even if he refused, he would still be killed. The young man silently clenched his teeth, but the crocodile could not endure this silence. He attacked him and ordered him to speak. The young man fiercely declared that the monster was too slow, and cut off his hand with one blow. The monster shuddered and stopped as if frightened, and Ratsu, pointing his sword at it, firmly said that he would not give up Shitorin and would not allow him to be killed. The monster begins to wonder who this man is, while the other monsters panic, grabbing for escape and retreating backward. Suddenly a white, key-like staff appears, and its owner creates a vortex that mercilessly devours the demons. When the whirlwind disappears, Ratsu slowly raises his head and sees someone's body hidden among the branches in a tree. A man dressed entirely in white sat in place and stubbornly insisted that the useless demons did not concern them at all. Before them stood a snow-white boy. White was everywhere on his skin, hair, eyes, clothes, and even on his artifact, so Ratsu felt a strange pressure in his chest. The boy introduced himself as Ratsu and, calling his achievement incredible, quickly dealt with all the demons he managed to gather together. Ratsu asked the boy to come down so they could calmly talk and clarify the situation. The boy declared that he would take his target, sharply raised his artifact, and Ratsu and Dai became alert, sensing a hidden threat. In a moment Rin found herself in the boy's strong embrace, feeling his breath close and her own heart pounding wildly. Ratsu directed black lightning magic at him, but the boy reacted instantly and disappeared from sight as if he had never been there. He sharply stated that this was not enough and he still needed greater combat experience, so Ratsu shouted, pushing himself and the situation toward an even harsher clash. He tried to fight the boy from Snow White, but all the blows dissolved in vain resistance. There was no result. Suddenly they disappeared and immediately appeared very close. The girl jerked her hand aside and the boy said he had something important for her and asked if she wanted to take them with her. The girl remembered Onyx and, along with the memory, recalled the one who ordered her to run away. The boy tightly gripped his artifact and cut through space with it, and Ratsu looked at them in surprised confusion. Rin was already ready to step into the portal, but Ratsu rushed to her and pleaded, "Let her go," leaving him behind. The boy called out to Rin and tears froze in his eyes, so the girl turned around, looked at him, and smiled. She took a step inside the portal, and the boy bitterly told Ratsu that Rin was a demon and would not be able to live among humans. The boy also stepped into the portal, but before that solemnly said goodbye to the traveler, casting one last glance at the path ahead. They disappeared in the glow, and Radu was left standing in place with an outstretched hand, as if still trying to hold on to what was already gone. The company of adventurers moved near the city, trying to find the demon, and one of them, swallowing anxiety, asked what would happen if they returned with nothing. Right in their path appeared a demon. Black hair fell in dark strands, black horns curved above his head, and dark skin made him almost unnaturally shadowy in the twilight. He counted exactly 20 people and stated that they saved him from the hassle of the trip to the city, and one of the boys cautiously asked if he was really a demon. The demon with icy irony asks if they did not recognize him, then indifferently raises his hand and orders the travelers to attack. The The travelers rush forward all at once, but none of their weapons leave a single wound on the demon, as if the blades helplessly slide over the essence. The demon mockingly clarifies if they really intend to attack like that, and suggests they first listen to him until the end. The travelers freeze in shock, trying to understand who he is, and some feel as if they have already seen him in some ancient vision. The demon snatches his artifact and loudly declares that he is one of the 7 great demons. Ratu, sitting by a pile of trophies, examined the artifacts of the defeated monsters one by one, but each of them turned out to be useless every time. The young man feverishly pondered how it happened that no artifact was suitable for synthesis, and felt as if the answer was slipping away at the last moment. Dea asked Ratsu why Rin left, and simultaneously a painful, doubtful question appeared. Were they even friends, or did it only seem so? He remembered her smile even before she left and doubted their friendship, but Dea immediately reminded him how warm and fun they were together. Ratsu told her that she should ask Rin directly. Then the girl asked where they were going, and he replied that it was a unique ability of the demon. The boy used the artifact to tear space and teleport, and most likely it was because of it that worldly demons appeared from the rift. This was not the opponent that could be overcome by simple force, so Ratsu tells Dea that he knows where Rin might be and explains why it is impossible to reach him without preparation. He narrates, as soon as the rift opened, he smelled something burning, and Dea immediately recalls how Rin once told them about the same thing. Ratsu, without hesitation, firmly decides to save the demon and declares that they are heading to Mount Kokuyo. Near the cave appeared a boy called Snow White and Shitorin, and the young man addresses Onyx, informing that he has arrived, although Onyx was not there. Around the corner, first quietly, then suddenly a snake demon emerges, greets them, and the boy, restraining his excitement, asks about Onyx, to which she replies that he has just returned. Someone else joyfully appears nearby, and Shitorin, startled, almost jumps in fear and sharply turns around. Onyx immediately shines upon seeing her, approaches closer, and asks if she missed him. The demon begins to inquire Quartz about the others, but he looks away and honestly says that their plan did not work. The court ruled Onyx not only knew that they were being taken to the royal capital, but also precisely understood the exact route they would take. Onyx turned to Synth, and the snake dryly replied that there is an informant in their guild, a traitor who craves revenge. Onyx comfortably settled on his stone throne and smugly declared that if you give people money, they will betray anyone. Quartz confirmed these words and, smiling restrainedly, said he was glad to be of help to them, so Onyx immediately invited him to join their group. But Quartz refused, explaining that then he would not be able to cooperate with other factions, and Onyx inquired about his exact goal. Quartz answered without hesitation that his goal is to destroy humanity. Onyx coldly noted that for this Quartz must handle everything alone, and if the plan works, he might even become the next Demon King. He recalled how the previous candidate was destroyed by a little red-haired girl, but Quartz just waved it off. He was no longer interested in that. When Quartz was about to leave, Onyx stopped him and asked how many adventurers would arrive, but the demon did not answer directly and assured that they would not come. Since Rin had already come here herself, there was no point for the adventurers to appear, so Quartz said goodbye and left while Onyx looked on in surprise, wondering why Shitorin came to him personally. He pressed her to himself and whispered that now she could finally heal his hand, but the girl suddenly screamed, "Stop." She pushed him away and asked him not to touch her, and when he touched Rin's artifact, he immediately realized she was still at level 1, and he felt sorry that she still could not kill the one she was supposed to. He asked if her return was motivated by the desire to heal him, and the girl shook her head. No, she did not have such power. He grabbed his head, lamenting aloud that her abilities were not enough even for a bit of his salvation. Suddenly his face cleared as if a memory flashed, and he told Rin that he had come up with an idea. He called Synth and began telling Rin that after her disappearance he started kidnapping adventurers because he was curious if any of them could heal his hand. And no matter how much it annoyed the demons, none of them could. The girl stopped him and asked him to repeat, and he again confirmed that he kidnaps travelers. Rin remembered how the examiner was talking exactly about this, and Onyx continued and explained that at that moment the needed idea came to his mind. He laid everything out clearly. Demonic artifacts become stronger when they kill people, and it doesn't matter how exactly the procedure happens, and at that moment a cart rolled into the yard. 2 carts entered the cave, both full of adventurers, and the demon serpent, with a furious hissing, overturned the carts and disrupted their disembarkation. A whole crowd of half-dead people lay on the ground, groaning confusedly and weakly moving in the dust. They begged for help, and Rin froze, stunned, looking at them, after which she sat down and asked what exactly Onyx intended to do. Onyx sharply grabbed her by the hand and declared that he had already caught them all, especially for her, so that Rin could level up and restore his mangled hand. He began to pressure Rin, persistently convincing her to kill them all until his pressure became almost unbearable. In the forest, someone was incessantly humming a melody, as if they had just run several kilometers and still couldn't calm down. It was Dia, trying with all her might not to fall behind Ratsu. She apologizes, feeling like an unnecessary obstacle, and asks Ratsu to go on alone. But the young man informs her that they have arrived at Mount Kokuyo. Shitoren remembers his brother and how he took 2 names. He was called Right Torai. Once a girl asked her brother why he had 2 names, and he replied that people have a surname related to the family, which is added to their own name. He says that it is incredibly cute, so he follows this tradition, and the younger sister enthusiastically declares that now she will also be Shitoren Toria. Rin's brother loved people so much that Rin called him human son, and he was interested in how exactly people call bonds the very connections that unite them. He loved her like a younger sister because she was born on the same mountain, and she responded to him with the warmth of native blood. Shitoren proudly showed the ring artifact, insisting that it was exactly the same as her brother's. He explained to her the human custom. The ring is worn on the ring finger when 2 lovers sign a contract, and Rin suggests that he do the same. Veit refuses, trying to shield them from this symbolism with words that they are brother and sister, and advises Shitoren to wear the ring on the index finger of her right hand. Veit whispers that it is precisely thanks to her kindness that she gained magic capable of healing both humans and demons. Smiling, he confidently says that this artifact is the perfect gift just for her. Rin then decided that peaceful times would last forever until Onyx arrived. She remembers walking through the forest until suddenly a demonic eagle fell before her, wounded and helpless, and Shitoren immediately rushed to help him. Without hesitation, she used healing magic and cured the demon, after which he got up, looked with an indifferent gaze, and simply ran away. Shitoren puffed her cheeks, offended, thinking that he didn't even thank her, and that day she was asked to forgive the demon supposedly. He was angry and sick for a long time. The boy praised her, but suddenly they noticed and heard a suspicious noise that broke the silence. Onyx arrived in their village to take Shitoren. Shitoren hid behind her brother while Onyx continued persuading her to join, promising that she could restore his hand. The brother replied that she did not have such power now and asked him to leave, but Onyx suggested that she could level up if she killed people. However, the brother said she did not want that. Onyx grabbed his head and sharply asked if his communication skills were really that bad, then declared he did not ask her, he ordered her. A magical sphere flared up in Wright's hands, and he hurled it at the demon. A loud explosion thundered, cutting through the darkness. Wright shouted to Shitoren to get out immediately, but she replied that she could not. While he held back the demon, Rin slipped out of his attention and tiptoed away. She crashed right into a human village, rushed to the nearest yards, and began begging for help, trembling with fear and pain. The men gathered and started asking if she was all right. She tried to explain that something had happened to her brother, but halfway through the word, the boys fell silent in confusion and suddenly stopped, as if they realized something terrible. The men saw a demon in her and retreated, looking at each other fearfully, deciding that she had come for their lives and could kill each one. The girl stretched out her hand into the darkness and begged for help as if her life depended on it. She lunged at the man, but he just darted aside, fleeing from her sight, and at the same time orders sounded: quickly gather the people and take up arms. Peasants closed in around her, intending to kill, and she, sitting on the ground, clutched her head as if trying to hold on to her sanity. Suddenly she snapped out of her memories and returned to reality, and Onyx shouted at her to kill them. He repeatedly questioned her whether she wanted to help, and persistently reminded her that all of this was prepared specifically for her. In her frenzy, she reminded him of his murder, how he took from her what was meant to live, and how after that he forced her to be silent, then declared that she would rather die than heal his hand, and then Onyx waved his artifact. He began killing people one by one, and Rin, holding his breath, asked why he was doing this. He replied coldly that if Rin did not kill them, he would have to kill them himself. People were enemies of demons, so he was stalling, deliberately not letting everything end immediately, and continued inflicting wounds, forcing enemies to fall and writhe in pain right in his path. The girls screamed at him in horror to stop, but their voices were lost in the rumble of footsteps and the heavy breathing of the crowd. Onyx sharply turned to his subordinate and said he felt someone was already approaching, and the silence before the strike poisoned the air. He ordered the snakes to take away everyone nearby, and Onyx did not understand who exactly this concerned until the moment the girl raised her artifact and prepared to activate it. The girl began healing people, and Onyx sharply turned around, stunned by what he saw. One of the travelers could not believe he was saved while she continued healing one by one, methodically dispelling pain from each body. Synth emerged from the cave with 3 demons and stopped, carefully examining the travelers as if assessing what they were doing here. She asks why they came and states that this is the basic Onyx Legion, and Ratsu immediately understands. Their path has led exactly where it needed to. Synth disdainfully calls them fools. D orders Ratsu to immediately enter the cave, and she herself turns around to deal with Synth. The man objects. He says it is reckless and tries to dissuade D, but she firmly insists that she has decided to protect her friends. Synth orders his men to kill them, and Dea jumps down right towards them, swinging her shield, then shouts to Ratsu to go into the cave. When Dea approaches the ground, she strikes the shield into the soil. A powerful shock sounds and she screams. Ratsu must run immediately. Synth orders one of his comrades to intercept her, but Dea cuts him off mid-phrase. She will not let them pass under any circumstances. Shitoren uses healing magic, saving people one by one, while Onyx watches everything with warm, smiling indifference, and the travelers ask her why she is doing this. The travelers ask if she intends to defeat him with their help, confessing they have no chance, and Rin just waves it off. She doesn't care about their hopes and asks them to just run away. They freeze in surprise, and Shitoren explains. Since the demon has already defeated them once, she wants to save as many people as possible before fate again confronts them with defeat. The travelers apologize and rush to the exit, while Shitoren remains standing, pondering whether she acted correctly. Meanwhile, Onyx raises her artifact and makes a characteristic gesture with her hand. All the saved travelers are simultaneously wounded, as if a blow passed through the hall of the final judgment on everyone she managed to save. Onyx sighs and says she is painfully sad because every time the girl tries to heal them, the curse only intensifies and they become even worse. He explains that he was simply adapting to her actions and she only now realized it, after which he sits beside her and persuades her to put an end to their suffering. He leans forward and quietly shares a memory. Once he heard her brother say before dying that Shitoren was kind to both people and demons. He asks her not to betray the faith that her brother left her, places a stone in her hands, and orders her to free them from pain while the power has not yet faded. She takes a step toward one of them, carefully examining his condition, and at that moment he tries to say something to her fragmentedly and hastily, as if afraid she won't make it in time. He asks her to kill him, and she raises the stone above his head and through her own determination recalls her brother's words. Suddenly, a voice comes from the cave entrance, apologizes to her for being late. The girl looks at him stunned, lowers the stone, and tears immediately well up in her eyes. Ratsu approaches them and, addressing Shitoren, assures her that everything will be fine. For a moment, a memory flashes in her mind about the first meeting with Ratsu and Dia. Because of her magic, she lost her brother in her native home. At that moment, both people and demons were her enemies. She could not even imagine being called lost, because she had nowhere to belong, yet she was indeed lost. Shirit averts her gaze from Ratsu and says she did not want him to interfere, then asks why he came at all. She clenches her fists, recalling how people tried to kill her, and wonders, why did Ratsu, even though he understands she is a demon, still come to save her? Ratsu answers simply and firmly, even if she is a demon, she is still his friend. It is then that Onyx interrupts the conversation and orders Ratsu not to meddle where it does not concern him, while Rin is about to level up by killing people. Ratsu looks at Onyx, who confidently declares that the number of victims will increase by one more, then spreads his wings and prepares to attack Ratsu, calling him his prey. While the demons stood nearby laughing, Ratsu sharply punched one of them right in the face. The demon flew back, fell to the ground, and not believing what Ratsu had done, hoarsely shouted that he would never forgive him. Shitoren begins healing people again, honestly saying that she cannot heal them completely, but will try to at least provide first aid. Ratsu begs her to stop because she was already on the verge of exhaustion, but Shitorin stubbornly continues the treatment and insists that only she can save them. She asks Ratsu if she is doing wrong by saving them, and Ratsu strokes her head, saying that her actions are worthy of respect. Tears well up in the girl's eyes, and after that Onyx turns to Ratsu and asks him a question. He asks Ratsu if this is a challenge, and Ratsu replies that he did not come just to challenge Onyx, he came to kill him. Outside, Dayu attacks the monsters, her shield withstands blow after blow, and the creatures look around in shock because she repels them all, while Snake thinks about how to deal with her shield. The monsters attack her one by one, but the girl still defends herself with the shield, until suddenly one of them attacks her from behind. That girl reacted lightning fast. She struck the monster in the face with her shield and sent it flying with a dull crack as if it had lost its footing. The monster turned to its companions and warned that it was dangerous. The girl almost hit him, and the blow could have decided everything, but his comrades only argued about how far he was thrown. The snake watched the fight closely, not taking its eyes off, and its face showed anxiety, as if it already saw what this could lead to. There was too much strangeness in this fight, but the monster was most paralyzed by fear from the very thought. The girl looked invulnerable, and every move of hers seemed unpunished. Finally, the monster realized the truth. The girl had a protective artifact, so she ordered her subordinates to attack with full force together, preparing a continuous strike from all sides. The monsters froze in place, holding their breath because they feared her counterattack, but the snakes began to scold them and urge them to be braver. Daya watched carefully as they finally understood her signal. They were plotting something. 3 demons prepared to attack simultaneously, pressing to the ground before the jump. The monsters rushed at the girl and she raised a defensive stance, but suddenly the snake flew up, spread its body over them, and sharply attacked from above. A hail of poison rained down from above, and Daya consciously directed it at the enemies, as if controlling the rain. She covered herself with a shield, but drops still hit while other monsters were already completely covered by the poisonous wave. It was poison that she could control with the power of thought, maintaining its direction, density, and accuracy of the strike. The poison acted lightning fast. As soon as at least one drop touched the victim, death covered them instantly, leaving silence instead of screams. The monsters working with the viper only managed to ask why she did it before their bodies silently fell. The snake thanked her deceased comrades for their help, and Daya confusedly threw down her sword and sat on the ground while the demon looked on in surprise. The artifact remained intact, unharmed, despite everything that had happened. The snake began spraying poison again, and Daya defended herself, hiding behind her shield, asking the monster in a trembling voice what the importance of life was. The snake burst into uncontrollable laughter, then quietly said she knew something that made the air thick and anxious. The demon, looking at Daya, solemnly declared that her artifact had no special abilities and smiled coldly. Daya explained to the girl that at first she thought Daya was stalling for time, but it turned out she simply could do nothing else but defend herself reliably. The snake sharply told the girl that she should not have attacked the monster from behind, and the demon noted with surprise that Daya could neutralize the poison, so he suggested it was most likely just a passive skill. She pointed to the girl's wound, the one the monster's poison seemed to have sewn into her body, and firmly said that the girl herself was unable to protect herself from the direct effects of the poison. The snake screamed that she would burn her to ashes and attacked again with her venom, but when drops of poison hit the girl, she immediately began to burn. The demon, smiling sinisterly, repeated her question and said that all lives are equally worthless. She stubbornly denied it. A worthless life is not worth a single day, and the demon nodded and added that 3 killed demons, dying, thanked her for the benefit. Unlike Dayaho could not even protect herself. The demon spoke with painful regret about the boy who rushed into the cave, as if it were his last, futile attempt to seize a chance. At that moment, Daya attacked Shinta, pressing her with her shield against the cold rock so that she could not move away, and the snake mocked. No matter how hard the girl tried, not a single scratch would remain on her. The girl steps back from the snake, clutching her hand because it was just burned by the poisonous venom that has already run across her skin. The demon cried out in pain because the girl deliberately touched his face with poison, causing deep burns. The demon leapt upward and began to create a giant ball of poison, melting in the air as a glowing black-green mass, and Daya watched this in horror. The demon lunged an attack, and the poison hit Daya directly, corroding the skin with icy flames. The girl lay almost dead, and the demon aloud wondered if the boy had resistance to poisons, then suddenly noticed the girl was still alive and barely breathing. Dayale lay on the ground, her body burning with pain from within, and she remembered Ratsu. She cried, regretting that she could not manage without him. She recalled her mother's words, not to cry just because she was teased a little, and how then Dea quietly said that she was not an adventurer and not that strong until she was asked which artifact exactly she wanted. After a short pause, she raised her gaze and answered that she wanted a large artifact because fighting was not her element, but she would protect people. She began to rise, and every word of her mother echoed in her head, painting how lucky her comrades would be if she was nearby. The demon flew up again, gathering another ball of poison in the air, and disdainfully told her that all the girl's efforts were in vain. The girl sharply focused and began to invoke the protective magic of an ally, while the demon aimed deadly poison at her. Dia stands near the ball as if pausing for a moment and remembers how Ratsu promised she would protect him and he would defeat the monsters, so now she commands herself she is strong and will not retreat. Demon's poison pierces the barrier, cracks, and suddenly throws the demon off balance, while Dia has already managed to develop the ability of the mirror shield, which reflects every enemy attack back. Dia sharply raises her gaze and in a commanding tone tells the monster that she will not allow it to touch her team, restraining fear with cold determination. When the poison hits the barrier, it flies back into the demon and strikes it mortally, tearing space with a sharp burst of dark power. The poison envelops the demon's entire body, and Dia, enduring the intense gaze, quietly says that she became an adventurer for only one purpose: to find her parents. The demon died, and the girl, standing over the already dead body, confidently declared that she is not useless. She is the shield hero. The girl headed to the cave and asked Rats and Shitorin to stay a little longer until everything settles down. She promised to protect them, and at that moment the space around her twisted, compressing reality into a swirling whirlpool cradle. Dee suddenly fell to the ground and froze, no longer moving, leaving behind silence and cold tension. Meanwhile, in the cave, events unfolded so quickly that Rin began to worry more and more, listening to every sound. Rats and the demon fought fiercely, deflecting each other's blows with their artifacts, and each clash clicked metallically with flashes of light in the dark air. During another clash of artifacts, the demon suddenly dodges, smiles, and compliments the young man, saying he has a wonderful weapon. Onyx admits that he got so carried away with the fight that he even forgot to introduce himself. He names his name and reveals that he is one of the 7 great demons. Radu makes a sharp sword strike, but Onyx instantly grabs his blade, pulls him closer, and asks him to name himself. Radu names his own name and jumps away from the demon, sharply retreating to a safe distance. Radu thinks to himself that great demons were once generals, and the Great War happened 300 years ago, so it is strange to him how a general could still be alive. The demon looming over the young man laughs and says that he is unlikely to become stronger than the hero who once took Onyx's hand. The young man asks again, and the demon replies that during the Great War he fought with one of the strongest heroes. In memory appears a moment of battle. The hero grabbed Onyx's hand, clinging to the power as if to the only support amid chaos. The demon adds that after the war the hero challenged that hero again, but he simply died of old age, and Onyx indifferently recalls rumors about a new hero, showing no interest. The youth quietly recalls the words of a great traveler who once told him that he would not become a hero, and he also remembers everyone he once saved. Then and now he simply could not lose. The hero activated his hellfire, and Onyx watched him intently, holding his breath in interest. The youth rushed to attack the demon, delivering one strike after another to not give him a single step to recover. He charged again and again until the demon stood still and did not resist, and the air everywhere flashed with sharp lightning. Eventually, the hero stopped. The companions whom Rin continued to heal admired Ratsu's fight and told him that he was better than the demon, after which Rin looked at him and pondered. She hoped that Ratsu could defeat this demon, and in her gaze flashed a quiet but stubborn confidence. When the smoke finally cleared, Onyx emerged from the darkness and, turning to the boy, asked how he felt about fighting, adding that if he had 2 hands, he would definitely applaud. The demon announced that the warm-up was over and ordered to take the fight seriously now, while the young man, in shock, only managed to ask what exactly he meant. The man's eyes suddenly widened. The demon had not a single scratch, so he turned pale as the demon raised his artifact and began enchanting it, preparing the power for use. Suddenly, the demon lunged at the boy and unleashed all his might on him, and from the pure, uncontrollable power, the young man was thrown out of the cave. He flew away, leaving behind a gust of dust and silence. Shitoren looked at Onyx with fear. He flew upward through the hole that Ratsu had broken with his body and told the girl that he intended to deal with him. While he returns, the man advised her to strengthen herself, otherwise he would kill everyone, even Rin. Dea lay unconscious outside, very close to her own rats, which had fallen and frozen in the dust, not making a single move. The man could not believe what was happening. A realization of the demon's true power flashed through his mind, and how Onyx had been toying with him from the very beginning, testing him to the limit. He decided to use a double enchantment, but fear trembled in his soul. In his current state, he might simply not withstand and resist the demon. He kept thinking about what to do next because his enchantments alone did not affect the demon until Onyx appeared and asked Ratsu to show everything he was capable of. Rin told the rescued travelers that she was coming to them and asked them to run away right now, but they begged her not to go there and to run away with them. Rin no longer wanted to run away. Ratsu stood opposite Onyx, tightly gripping his sword and preparing to use a spell. But suddenly Ratsu threw the sword aside, grabbed his head, and screamed from unbearable pain, because he did not understand which curse was affecting him. Onyx calmly explained that this was a feature of his skill and instant deadly punishment, but Ratsu's artifact suppresses its effect. However, this did not protect him completely. The demon, rushing into attack, shouted that Ratsu should not die from this minor curse. The demon tore through the air with a strike, but the boy managed to shield himself with the sword at the very last moment. But despite this, he was still thrown forward, and he was surprised because he could not even parry the attack. Ratsu, half-conscious, thought that due to the difference in abilities and because of the curse, he would definitely lose consciousness. The demon ordered Ratsu to stand up and fight seriously, but suddenly stopped and saw Shitoren running towards Ratsu. His gaze sharply changed, and he screamed furiously at Shitoren. Onyx delivers a devastating blow to the girl, but Ratsu at the last moment throws himself forward and saves her from a deadly hit. Ratsu falls exhausted and lies motionless, and the girl apologizes to him in a trembling voice and asks if he is okay. A deep wound is visible on Ratsu's side, and Rin looks at him in panic, whispering that it is all her fault. Tears flash in her eyes, and she, not losing hope, tries to heal him, believing that he is still alive. She tries to use magic, but in vain. Nothing works, and Ratsu barely opens one eye, warning, Onyx is approaching. The demon calls her and croaks. He twisted himself with rage to gather as many sacrifices for her as needed, but now his fury boils because she allowed all this to be wasted. He presses her with his gaze and asks why she doesn't run away like last time, when she abandoned her friends to their fate. The girl slowly raises her gaze to the demon, coldly calls him a monster, and orders him to die right now. The demon waves his artifact, preparing to kill Rin, but suddenly something sharp and heavy hits his head. The blow throws him off rhythm. It was a shield. The demon looked at Dea and asked who she was, and Dea barely stands on her feet, completely exhausted. She does not take her eyes off the demon and sharply asks how he dared to harm her friends. The demon understands that she defeated the serpent, but still shows no particular concern. He turns to Ratsu and says he is disappointed in him. He expected a worthy fight, but instead it turned out that Ratsu is just a boy hiding behind a powerful artifact. Onyx announces punishment and promises he will make Ratsu watch his friends die and then kill him with his own hands. Ratsu reaches out to the demon, who retreats and in a pleading tone asks not to kill Shitoren and Dea. He hears his friend's laughter in his head and, as if ignoring the pain, begins to crawl forward, overcoming the last steps to salvation. Radu reaches for the sword. His supported hand touches the hilt and he struggles to get up, begging his partner to give him the last of his strength. Radu asks for strength to protect the girl's strength that will allow him to kill the demon, while Rin tries to stay on her feet, shielding Dea as the demon is about to deal with them. Suddenly, behind the demon, a pillar of incredible magical power bursts forth, and Onyx, turning around in surprise, sees a figure casting a double spell. Ratu, gathering all that remains in his body, releases a double enchantment spell and directs it where the dark threat trembles. The girls, stunned, look at him in amazement, and Onyx feels the hidden power smoldering inside Ratu like embers under ash. Radu rushes into battle while Onyx casts a death curse on his artifact, preparing a trap even before the first clash. They collide, two forces crashing into each other like thunder and flame, and the space cracks from their confrontation. Suddenly, a colossal explosion erupts and the girls instinctively cover themselves with their hands and shields, thrown back by the wave of power. Shadowren, looking around, asks what happened to Radu, and Dea, without taking her eyes off the fight, explains his unique ability to use 2 spells simultaneously. Radu and Onyx fight with swords, exchanging blows, flashes of magic, a brief retreat, and an instant return to attack as they charge at each other again. Despite the fight, Onyx laughs and challenges him, as if he immensely enjoys fighting Ratsu, mockingly asking if that was the very reason Ratsu became a traveler. Suddenly, Onyx delivers a kick, pins Ratsu to the ground, and frowning fiercely, clarifies, does he really travel to become a hero and gain fame in battles? However, Ratsu, defending himself and breaking free from the ground, firmly replies, he became a traveler not for glory, but to stop all battles before they flare up again. During the lunge, he cuts through the distance with his sword and pierces Onyx in the side, and when he withdraws the blade, hot blood spurts onto the ground, leaving a dark splash on the stone. The demon freezes and hoarsely begins a phrase about what his flesh was like, but suddenly breaks off the words, shifts his gaze to Ratsu, and asks in surprise why he still hasn't finished him off. He explains that this is his last chance to kill one of the most powerful demons and get closer to his own goal. The boy looks at him tensely while the girls whisper among themselves, waiting for the moment to see if he defeats Onyx. Suddenly, the young man feels sick sharply and blood spurts from his mouth. Rin, stunned, instantly turns her gaze to him. The demon rejoices. The curse has finally begun to gnaw at Ratsu from within, and immediately, having caught his weakness, he lunges at him. But Ratsu does not let it end this way. He explodes with hellfire magic, trying to destroy the demon before he can finish him off. When it was all over, the young man clasped his head with his palms, collapsing to his knees from unbearable pain. He thought that if the fight dragged on even a moment longer, the end would be inevitable. His strength was at the limit, and his body seemed to be burning out under the curse. He suddenly realized how powerful the demon's strength was, and in the next second, his figure emerged from the clouds of smoke. The demon demonstrates complete superiority, and coldly tells Ratsu that he shouldn't even hope to achieve victory. Ratsu freezes in shock. He is still alive, although he received a direct hit of hellfire, but his sword has turned into a rusty, defenseless weapon. Radu clenched his artifact and whispered to it, asking if this was all it was capable of. Just at the moment, Rin came running to him headlong. He looked at Rin and explained that it would buy them time while they both ran and tried to escape the danger. Sitoren resolutely refused to run, stood beside him, and said she would not leave, after which the young man shouted and asked in furious rage if she really wanted to die. He sharply replied that they would all perish if she stayed there, and ordered to run with all their might without looking back. Sitoren turned and dashed away, and the youth silently apologized to her in his thoughts and begged only one thing, just survive. He asked Dea to run, but she bitterly asked if he was driving her away because he considered her useless. She reminded him of his own words, she would protect him as long as he fought. He explained that Dea had become an adventurer to find her parents and she could not die like that. Instead, she replied that wherever she fell it did not matter, as long as she was ready to protect him to the very end. Suddenly, the demon rushed in a whirlwind attack and inflicted a mortal wound on Dea. She fell silently and froze in place, and blood flowed abundantly from the wounds, helplessly coloring the ground around. Ratsu drew his sword, and as soon as the steel was in his hand, it immediately transformed, flashing with a new form. Shitoren looked sharply ahead and thought that everything was happening just like last time. Because she did not want to be the only one left, she had to save them all. She rushed forward, inventing how exactly she could help them, when suddenly one of the travelers called out to her. Shitoren dashed to him and asked why he hadn't fled yet, and he replied that he couldn't leave her and wanted to give her a potion. Shitoren ordered him to keep it to himself, but he refused, saying she needed it more. This potion allowed a person to recover only to the extent necessary to use magic once, because it was enough for exactly one single spell. The blade pierced through human flesh as if it met no resistance. Ratsu screamed when the onyx saber struck his shoulder, and the demon drew his sword and said that now they were even. Onyx declared that even together with both hands, Ratsu would not be able to defeat him. The young man confidently said, as long as he could raise at least one hand, he was still capable of defeating Ratsu, and Rin rushed forward but stopped upon seeing the demon standing very close to Ratsu. If he sneaked too close, she would get in his way, so a plan of what to do next emerged in her mind. She sees the wounded Daya and quickly rushes to her, while Daya, with eyes barely open, tries to say something to Shido Goran. Shadoran instantly understands her intention and confidently says that he knows what to do next. Ratsu and Onyx fight fiercely, and after another clash, Ratsu's sword flies out of his hand while Onyx, relentless, proclaims, "This is the end." Onyx attacks and his strike is extinguished by Daya's shield, causing the demon to freeze in surprise. Then he shifts his gaze to Rin and realizes it was her. While the demon stood bewildered, Ratsu drew his artifact and launched into an attack. He delivered a powerful sword strike directly at the demon, and the blade sank into the very shadow of his body. Before dying, the demon recalls how he told Rin's brother no village could save her, but he ordered Onyx to believe in Rin's connection with humans. He laughed at this, insisting that humans were his enemies, while the youth before dying begged humans to save her. Now Onyx was split in two, and the demon pondered the bond between humans and demons. He didn't even manage to draw his sword and immediately died, vanishing from this world. Ratsu collapsed to the ground exhausted, and the girls rushed to him, not believing that their ordeal was finally over. He held them close and cried with joy, feeling relief that they were alive. The girls couldn't stop their tears. They sobbed and confessed how scared they had been throughout all this horror. Through the torn clouds, sun rays broke through, and nearby in a dark cloak lay two katanas, cold and silent. In the largest city of travelers, a meeting is already underway, filled with tense anticipation and the whispering of the crowd. Shitoren stood before the city leader together with the travelers she had saved and convinced him to accept their story, so Rin immediately received permanent residence. Ratsu opened his eyes and saw the ceiling with a chandelier, then noticed Daya. She was shining with joy because he had finally woken up. He asked where they were, and Daya replied that it was Kryland, which made the young man unable to hide his genuine surprise. The victorious travelers whom Rat saved brought him to this very city that same day, and he asked Daya to repeat the last words she said. She explained that he had slept for a full 2 days, and although he was even more surprised, he immediately and sharply asked about Rin. After the question, he hears her deep snoring and sees Rin sleeping right at his feet. He smiles gently, runs his fingers through her hair. Rin's eyelids tremble, and her eyes open. Rin suddenly wakes up and notices that the rats have also already woken up. He greets her good morning, and she beams with joy that he has finally woken up. Shitoren begins to ask if anywhere hurts and how he feels when suddenly the door opens and the nurse confirms he is not asleep, he is conscious. She tells him that the wound was very deep but has almost completely healed, so now he has nothing to worry about. The boy says in surprise that it took only 2 days to heal and sincerely thanks the nurse, who replies that it is not only her merit, so the rat looks gratefully at Rin. The nurse explains that Rin possesses incredible healing magic and adds that as soon as she received citizenship, the nurse immediately hired her. Daya thanks the adventurers who convinced the city leader, and the man dryly notes that Shitoren was just lucky to get citizenship so quickly. Mit asks with doubt if everything is really alright. If Rin is not nearby, she supposedly won't be able to heal him, but Rats assures everything is fine. From the very beginning, they were looking for a safe, permanent home for Rin, so that being near them she would not be in constant danger. Daya smiles at the boy, who continues confidently insisting that there could not have been a better outcome than this, and the girl nods, acknowledging his correctness. The doctor had already reached for the door but remembered in time the guild master's request to bring rats to him so he could see them, and asked him to rest well today. The door closed and the boy confessed to the girls that he was terribly nervous before the meeting with the guild leader, and they calmed him down, advising not to overthink it. The boy asks how the girls are, and Rin says everything is fine, but involuntarily adds that the day has returned again. Rats asks about the back, and the girl replies that the wound has already healed, although once it was so deep that now it left a scar. Rats asks to see it, but she jokes with a smile that she won't show anything, yet Rats insists, not backing down a step. The girl slightly pulls down her shirt, and Rats sees a scar covering almost half of her back and understands how long it has hurt and still hasn't disappeared. The girl asks permission to get dressed when suddenly Rats begins to apologize to her, stammering and feeling guilty because of what he saw. He grabs his head and says that her precious body suffered because of his weakness, after which he vows to become stronger to protect them. But Daya replies that protection is her duty, although so far, according to her, it has been a complete zero, and in this honesty there is a bitter tension. Ratsu tells her that from the very beginning she protected him, and the girl quietly sits and looks sadly through him. It is clear that her thoughts are far away. The young man continues and assures, if it weren't for her, his adventure would have ended long ago, and they would not have reached this moment. The girl bursts into a sincere smile and reminds him of her promise to protect, adding that the scar will now become proof of her determination. Dea smiles and calls herself the Sword Hero, and Ratsu immediately gets drawn into her words and starts asking about her heroic reward, but she just explains that she simply called herself that. Shitoren happily watches them as if these two have become themselves again, while in Whiteland events were unfolding in parallel. Helio accepts his artifact, glances at it, and with a smile that doesn't quite reach joy, says to his friend, he has returned to work but feels like he has lost a lot of time, and his friend involuntarily comments on his strange actions. Helio walks on without answering, and his friend, catching up, asks if he is even listening to him, and suddenly Helio stops halfway and quietly says, "I'm sorry." His friends clearly did not expect that from him, and the young man begins to justify himself, shaking his sleeve, saying that Helio should not worry. He was just joking, and since they are friends, they should be punished together. Helio sharply cuts him off with a shout, "Shut up," clenches his fists, and not giving confusion a chance, declares that they will take the quest as soon as possible. Helio stands in front of the building, raises the artifact to eye level, and states that they need to earn more merts, and his friend, in a practical tone, advises looking for another place. Between the walls of neighboring houses, two boys were chatting about the broken altar, and about how the hero command might have been involved in all this. Helio called the boys and went straight to them, and one of his friends tried to stop him by grabbing his sleeve. Helio approached closer and sharply asked where the altar was, which confused them, so they pretended not to understand what he was talking about. Helio's face flared with rage, and he asked the same question again, forcing them to answer. Next to Kryland, a crab-like monster, letting out a battle cry, rushed into attack and snatched the victim from a place where it was not expected. The monster fought with Imezdi's friends, and two girls simultaneously shouted a spell and directed magical attacks at the monster. The girls cut off the monster's claws, and while the creature writhed in pain, the twins quickly prepared for a new attack, this time joined by Imezdi. The girls dealt the final blow and killed the monster, and Imezdi smiled and called the victory a trifle, as if it was meant to be. The friends barely had time to recover when, after becoming adventurers, they immediately set off for the adventurers' capital, and Imezdi explained why she chose this path. She added that none of this was related to the information about the day when she might have been expected in this city, and the friends teased her by calling her silly. Amethyst's friend said that leaving Dayu alone with the rats was wrong, but Leipai stubbornly denied it and insisted that she did not think so. She whispered to Amethyst they should be grateful to him because he saved their lives. Amethyst glanced at Leipai with a growl, and her friend added that she looked like their stepmother when the girls were already approaching the city and suddenly were stopped. Before them appeared the guild leader, and the girls explained that they were going to report on the completed task, after which the leader sincerely thanked them. And instead of letting go, the leader asked the girls to go with them, because the guild master wants to see them. Rats wakes up the next day, carefully packs his things, and prepares to head to the guild's main office. The adventurers sincerely thank the doctors for their care, and they ask them to wait a bit for Shitoren while she finishes preparations. The traveler, whom Onyx chose as a victim, calls that boy and is about to say something to him on behalf of everyone who was in the cave. The boy bows and sincerely thanks, but Rats awkwardly puts him in an uncomfortable position, so he confusedly asks who he is. The boy replies that he was one of those who ended up in the cave, and the rat also loses track of his thoughts and admits he was too caught up in the fight. Ritsu recalls with warm pride how they helped Rin with submitting citizenship documents, but he replies that their contribution will never compare to what Ritsu managed to achieve. The hero just nods, saying that this is quite enough, and sincerely thanks them. Shitoren comes out in medical attire and asks to be told what suits her and how she looks, and the rats and the traveler in unison assure her that she is simply incredible. Dea fears that villains might come for her, but Rats calmly assures that will not happen and asks Rin to promise him one specific thing. He begins to worry because of her promises, and Dea notices this is not the same story, they are going their separate ways, but still promise to visit. The adventurer, standing behind Rin, quietly says that the rats will be remembered as heroes for a long time. In Shitoren's head, memories of their first meeting flashed one after another. Tears roll down the girl's cheeks and the girl calls out to them, unable to hold back her sobbing. They sharply turn around and Rin, still crying, thanks them for everything they have done. Meanwhile, in a deserted place, a conversation about Onyx's death is taking place. Someone tries to calm down, saying it's nothing terrible. Onyx was one of the weakest. Quartz looked at someone with a confused face and quietly said that once Onyx was one of the strongest. The demon replied that Onyx was indeed powerful while he had 2 hands, but he was interested in something else entirely. He wanted to find out the name of Onyx's killer, and Quartz admitted that she did not know that name. Still, the demon recalled one more detail: the killer held a rusty sword, and one of the great 7 demons sitting on the throne promised to remember this thing.